Chapter 180. Old Man Wu, you don't have to bother with this matter. Lian Guangzhu waved his hand. I don't want to destroy our friendship of many years. Bullshit. Wu Songlin directly rebuked. This brat crippled someone, after all, and must be punished by the Academy's rules. Lian Guangzhu's attitude also became firm. Isn't it just crippling a piece of trash? Wu Songlin said lightly. Sir Wu, be careful with your words. Feng Yan interrupted, his tone actually carrying a threat. Who do you think you are, daring to reprimand me? Wu Songlin humphed, and struck out with his right hand, aiming for Feng Yan's face. He was an elite of spiritual pedestal tier, and though this strike was made casually, its power was extremely great. Origin power formed a large hand, and slapped towards Feng Yan's face. Pang! Lian Guangzhu moved in time, dispersing Wu Songlin's attack. He frowned, and said, Old Man Wu, do you really want to go against me? As long as you don't touch him, I naturally can't be bothered to fight with you. Wu Songlin took a step back. Lian Guangzhu stared at Wu Songlin, and Wu Songlin stared back at Lian Guangzhu. The two old men, whose ages added up to more than 150 years old, stared at each other. All right, Old Man Wu, I'll give you face this time. Lian Guangzhu nodded. Headmaster. Feng Yan said discontentedly. Heng, take your younger brother and leave. Can you still reattach your arms? Lian Guangzhu frowned slightly impatiently. Feng Yan did not dare to say anything else, and could only pick up Feng Luo and leave with Lian Guangzhu. The two severed arms were naturally picked up by two of the four guardian deities, and they followed along. A chaotic conflict ended just like that. Wu Songlin nodded slightly at Ling Han, and directly left. There were too many people, and he did not want to expose his relationship with Ling Han. He only wanted others to know that Ling Han was protected by him. Brother Ling, if you don't mind, sit with me and have a cup of tea, the eldest imperial prince asked with a smile towards Ling Han. Ling Han smiled, and said, Many thanks to eldest imperial prince for lending a hand just now, Ling Han is extremely grateful. Please, please. The two of them left together. As they walked past Li Hao and Zhu Shuiyi, Ling Han said, You two go to Tianyiji to look for Yuan Chu first. Tell him that I'm the one who asked you to go. Stay at his place for a while. Thank you, big brother Ling, Li Hao and his companion said gratefully. Ling Han nodded. These two people had been targeted by Feng Luo because of him. There was no way he would just stand by and watch. The eldest prince brought Ling Han to a tea house and asked for an elegant room. The middle-aged man naturally stood guard outside the door, and there were only the eldest prince and Ling Han in the room. I've heard that Brother Ling is on very good terms with the Grand Masters of Alchemy. Now that I've seen it for myself, it is indeed so, the eldest prince said. There was a hint of wariness in his eyes, but there was also a hint of passion. Ling Han knew that the third imperial prince had managed to get many of the hesitant neutral parties to side with him because of him. The eldest imperial prince naturally could not sit still, and wanted to extend an olive branch to him. Before this, the community of alchemists was extremely aloof, and would definitely not get involved in the struggle for imperial power. But with the appearance of Ling Han, there were suddenly many more variables. Gaining the support of Ling Han was equivalent to gaining the support of the community of alchemists in Rain Country. This was an incredibly terrifying power. Even if the current Rain Emperor wanted to pass on his throne, he would have to think twice before doing so. After all, this could possibly shake the very foundation of the Empire. Thus, the eldest imperial prince also hoped to maintain a good relationship with Ling Han. Wu Songlin's previous attitude had further strengthened his resolve. Ling Han smiled, and said, Does the eldest imperial prince know what methods that Feng Yan has mastered to be able to make Headmaster Lian so biased towards him? The eldest imperial prince instantly frowned, and revealed a furious expression. He could not help but slam the table, and said, That traitor. He did not necessarily hate Feng Yan that much, but it was obvious that Feng Yan and Ling Han were sworn enemies, so he naturally did not mind acting a little exaggerated to draw closer to Ling Han. This person has a special physique, and his battle prowess is also very strong. But if it was just that, he would only be able to gain Lian Guangzu's recognition at most, and would definitely not be able to command him. But Feng Yan's attitude, though respectful on the surface, actually seems to be Lian Guangzu's superior. How strange, Ling Han mumbled. The eldest imperial prince also sank into deep thought. What kind of power did Feng Yan have that could actually make a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier, a highly respected old headmaster, practically listen to his commands? As the eldest imperial prince of Rain Country, he actually knew nothing about this matter, which made him feel a faint sense of unease. I will investigate this matter, the eldest imperial prince said. Then, he turned to Ling Han, and said in a serious tone, Brother Ling is an intelligent man, so I will not beat around the bush and waste everyone's time. What does the eldest imperial prince want to say? Ling Han asked with a smile, though he already knew the eldest imperial prince's intentions. I would like to ask Brother Ling to help me ascend the throne, the eldest imperial prince said. Instantly, the air of a ruler burst forth, and his eyes shone with a dazzling light. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, What virtue or ability do I have to actually be able to help the eldest imperial prince ascend the throne? Ha ha ha, Brother Ling is too modest. The eldest imperial prince laughed loudly, and then changed the topic. If I ascend the throne, the Ling family will be the ones who have performed a great meritorious service, and can be conferred the title of king with a different surname. King with a different surname? If these words were heard by the courtiers, they would definitely be so shocked that their scalps would go numb. In the history of Rain Country, there had never been a king with a different surname. This was definitely the highest honor that a courtier could receive. Thus, the eldest imperial prince's face was filled with anticipation. He believed that Ling Han would definitely agree immediately. However, he was soon disappointed, because there was not the slightest bit of change on Ling Han's face. His eyes were too clear and deep, as if his ambition to become an emperor was but a fleeting cloud in his eyes. Ling Han slowly opened his mouth, and said, I have no interest in power at all. In his last life, he was one of the strongest people in the world, what more when he was the Alchemy Emperor? How could the power and influence that he had in his grasp be comparable to that of a secular emperor? In this life, he only had one goal, and that was to become a grand master of martial art, shatter the void, and become a god. The eldest imperial prince was originally a very eloquent person, but now he felt a kind of awkwardness that he did not know what to say, because he had already revealed all his trump cards, yet Ling Han did not even consider it. Could it be that he was going to hand over the throne to Ling Han? Was that a joke? He thought for a moment, then said, Brother Ling, if I ascend the throne, I will give you the possibility of breaking through to the flower blossom tier. Ling Han could not help but have a strange expression as he glanced at the eldest imperial prince. In Rain Country, because of the limitations of cultivation techniques, even the most talented person would not be able to break through to the flower blossom tier. Thus, this promise of the eldest imperial prince could be said to be extremely shocking. Perhaps even the ancestors of the 8 great clans would be tempted. But for Ling Han, breaking through to the flower blossom tier was nothing difficult. After all, he was an ultimate warrior of heaven tier in his last life. Though I am not sure about the specifics, but it should be related to the power of the nation, right? Ling Han was indeed a little curious, so he raised his eyebrows and said to the eldest imperial prince. The eldest imperial prince was instantly dumbstruck. Chapter 181. Power of the nation could help a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator break through to the flower blossom tier. Such a huge secret was something that even the eldest imperial prince only knew by chance. Moreover, this was not the true meaning of the flower blossom tier. It required the continuous infusion of power of the nation to maintain this cultivation level, or else one would very quickly fall from grace. It was precisely because of this that there was only one flower blossom tear cultivator in Rain Country. The eldest imperial prince's offer was actually somewhat deceptive. When he ascended the throne, he would use the power of the nation for Ling Han's use, but how long he would use it for was another matter. Anyways, he would already be the new Rain Emperor by then, wielding great power over the country. Who would dare to disobey him and oppose him? He had never thought that Ling Han seemed to know more about the power of the nation than he did, and was extremely disdainful of it. He could not help but be dumbfounded. He could understand if one did not want beauty, wealth, and power, but to disregard even flower blossom tear cultivators like they were nothing, he was really at his wit's end. This kind of person seemed to have no desires, and as the saying went, without desires, what could he use to attract the other? Ling Han smiled, and said, "Actually, I am only friends with the third imperial prince, and have never been his subordinate. I can also be friends with the eldest imperial prince. I have no intention of power, nor do I want to get involved in a power struggle." Only then did the eldest imperial prince's expression become slightly better. He frowned slightly, considered for a moment, and said, "I wonder if young Master Han has any interest in mystical power." Previously, he had only thought of Ling Han as a spoiled brat who was highly favored by many alchemists, just like Feng Yan, who had some unknown background and connections. Thus, although he thought highly of him, whether he respected him or not was another matter. But after a conversation with Ling Han, he no longer dared to belittle this young man who was only 16 or 17 years old, and unconsciously used honorifics on him. Ling Han was surprised, and said, "Mystical power." "That's right, mystical power." The eldest imperial prince nodded, and explained, "Mystical powers are very special. Some mystical powers can injure the enemy, and are extremely powerful, while some mystical powers can only be used as support. They can be called martial arts techniques, but they do not consume origin power. However, every mystical power is extremely valuable, and cannot be bought with money." Ling Han naturally knew what divine power was. This kind of technique was very rare. Even in his previous life, he had not seen it many times. But in the few times he had seen her, she had left a deep impression on him. In the depths of various historical sites, he encountered a special constitution that could use the heaven-devouring earth-devouring divine ability. He was clearly only at the deity transformation tier, but he was swallowed into his stomach and almost refined. Although this special physique was later killed by Ling Han, if both parties were at the same level, even if Ling Han was at the 9th level and his opponent was only at the 1st level, the outcome would have been completely different. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to force out this divine ability. Ling Han's interest was piqued, and he said, "From what the eldest prince has said, it seems like you have a divine art in your hands. I don't have it, but the national treasury does. As long as young Master Han helps me ascend the throne, I will definitely hand over this mystical power to you." Ling Han shook his head, and said, "The eldest prince is not sincere. If you can bring that mystical power to me in a few days, I can consider it. The mystical power is too precious. It's locked in the inner treasury, and even I can't enter it. How can I bring it to you?" The eldest prince said a little angrily. Ling Han obtained a useful piece of information. There was another inner treasury in the national treasury. He laughed, and said, "Then what is the use of this mystical power? Don't tell me that the eldest prince doesn't even know this." "The eye of truth," the eldest prince said, looking a little guilty. He didn't cultivate this mystical power, but he knew that the eye of truth wouldn't increase his attack power at all after he cultivated it, but could only break through illusions. In his mind, what was the use of this? Thus, he naturally felt guilty. However, no matter how lame a mystical power was, it was still a mystical power. That was why he dared to use it to tempt Ling Han. Ling Han was startled at first, and then ecstasy surged in his heart. The eye of truth itself indeed didn't have the slightest destructive power, but it was definitely more precious than most offensive mystical powers, because it could break through illusions and directly reach one's heart. For the simplest example, after cultivating the eye of truth, one wouldn't need to be afraid of all illusory techniques and illusory formations. What was more terrifying was that the eye of truth could also see through the opponent's and oneself's weaknesses. Seeing through the weaknesses of others, then one's own attacks could be unleashed with greater power. Seeing through one's own weaknesses could be improved, and even if it couldn't be improved, one could still better protect oneself. Whether there was an even stronger ability, Ling Han didn't know. After all, he had only heard of this mystical power in his last life. He'd never thought that the tiny Rain country would actually have such a powerful mystical power. Ling Han thought about it again. In Rain country, he'd also discovered quite a number of precious items, such as the remains of a shattering void tier elite. Perhaps when so many elites had gathered, there were a few who were only heavily injured and didn't die. After that, they stayed in Rain country, leaving behind such a powerful mystical power like the Eye of Truth. Ling Han was moved, but his expression didn't change. As someone who'd lived 2 lives, how could he not have such a temperament? He asked, "Eldest Imperial Prince doesn't seem to have cultivated this mystical power. Otherwise, he might not have been willing to take it out as a bargaining chip." The eldest Imperial Prince shook his head, and said, "The inheritance of the Eye of Truth is very special. It's hidden in an eyeball, and it has to resonate with something before it can be directly transmitted into one's mind. Otherwise, it's just a piece of trash." Ling Han gave an "oh." No wonder he hadn't been able to find the swallow the heavens and devour the earth mystical power. So this kind of inheritance was completely different from cultivation and martial arts techniques, and couldn't be expressed in words or diagrams. Interesting. He smiled, and said, "When eldest Imperial Prince can bring that eyeball over, then we can discuss the matter of cooperation. For now, let's all be friends, okay?" The eldest Imperial Prince also knew that empty promises wouldn't move Ling Han, because whatever he could promise, the third Imperial Prince could as well, without any advantage. But at least he'd become friends with Ling Han, so the other matters could be taken slowly. "Young Master Han, the day after tomorrow, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion will be holding an auction, and it's said that there will be an incredibly valuable foundation building pill. Would you be interested in coming along?" the eldest Imperial Prince asked earnestly. Ling Han couldn't help but have a strange expression on his face. This foundation building pill was naturally provided by him, but he'd never thought that it would actually become the most valuable auction item. He immediately wanted to shake his head, but after some thought, he realized that the level of Rain country was too low. Perhaps there would be some treasures that would be thrown into the dark. "That's fine." He changed his mind. "Ha ha ha ha, then the day after tomorrow, I will personally come to receive young Master Han." The eldest Imperial Prince was very satisfied. If he appeared together with Ling Han in public, it would definitely create the impression that the relationship between the two of them was very deep. At that time, those mid-tier clans would have to reconsider their stance. Ling Han nodded, and took his leave. He still had to go see Li Hao and Zhu Shuiyi. Chapter 182. It was unknown whether the eldest Imperial Prince would be able to discover the secret behind Feng Yan, but it would probably be difficult. Because the third Imperial Prince had already made his move a few days ago, but Lian Guangzhu had appeared and forcibly chased the Imperial Guards he had sent out of the academy. With such an incident, the third Imperial Prince would definitely investigate Feng Yan. If the third Imperial Prince had discovered anything, he would definitely inform him, but there was still no news from the third Imperial Prince. Obviously, he had not discovered anything yet. When they arrived at Tianyiji, Ling Han comforted Li Hao and Zhu Shuiyi. It was temporarily impossible for Li Hao to return to the academy, but it was definitely a blessing in disguise for Li Hao. What kind of place was Tianyiji? A place that sold medicine. There was nothing else here, but in terms of alchemical pills, it was estimated that at least a third of Rain country's stockpile was here. And in terms of high-level alchemical pills, they were basically sold from this place. Ling Han treated Li Hao as a true friend, so he naturally told Yuan Chu to provide Li Hao with an unlimited supply of alchemical pills, and he himself would also give Li Hao some pointers on his cultivation. Just think, with an endless supply of alchemical pills and the guidance of a former heaven-tier elite, if Li Hao's power could not improve by leaps and bounds, then he should really smash himself to death with a piece of tofu. Li Hao and Zhu Shui naturally understood this, and could not help but feel even more grateful towards Ling Han. They secretly decided that they would definitely do something for Ling Han. After leaving Tianyiji, Ling Han had not even returned to the academy when he was invited by the third imperial prince along the way. Brother Ling. The third imperial prince was still as domineering as before, but there was a hint of gloom on his face. I heard that my eldest brother came looking for you today. Since third imperial prince already knows, then why bother asking when you already know the answer? Ling Han said directly. He had no interest in the struggle for power between these two brothers, and did not want to get involved in it at all. He. The third imperial prince laughed. I believe that brother Ling will not be swayed by my eldest brother's flowery words. Ling Han could not help but smile, and said, that may not be the case. He listed out all the conditions that the eldest imperial prince had laid out. As he listened, the expression on the third imperial prince's face continuously changed. He thought to himself that the eldest imperial prince was really ruthless, even daring to promise such conditions as becoming a prince with a different surname and breaking through to the flower blossom tier. It should be known that even if the current reign emperor wanted to bestow a title to a king with a different surname, he would still be opposed by many officials. There were too many interests involved in this, and it was not something that could be resolved with a simple title. To be conferred the title of king, one must have a fiefdom. But Rain country had already been established for thousands of years, and all of its territories had already been divided. Where would he find a piece of land for Ling Han? Could it be that he wanted Ling Han to lead an army into battle and occupy the territory of another country? And using the power of the nation to help Ling Han break through to the flower blossom tier was even more ridiculous. If it was that easy, then there would only be one person in the flower blossom tier in the Rain country. I just knew that brother Ling is a righteous man, and would definitely not betray me. The third imperial prince laughed loudly. He looked like he was laughing very happily, but Ling Han could hear the sinister tone in his laughter. In the struggle for imperial power, who was not cold-blooded and cruel? Even blood brothers could stab each other. Ling Han laughed mischievously, and said, that might not necessarily be the case. As long as there is enough interest, anything can be discussed. Pooh! The third prince immediately spluttered. It was as if his face had been punched by someone, and his expression was extremely awkward. His face twitched, and he forced a smile, and said, Brother Ling is really good at joking. Ling Han shook his head, and said, I am not joking. For example, if I can cultivate the Eye of Truth, I will definitely become good friends with the third prince. Eye of Truth. The third prince's expression changed. Only now did he realize that the eldest prince had also revealed this treasure to Ling Han. But compared to a king with a different surname and power of the nation, this mystical power was actually a small matter. If it was not locked deep within the inner treasury, he would not mind taking it out and giving it to Ling Han. After all, it was only a support-type mystical power, and after so many years, there was no one who could obtain the inheritance from it. He believed that Ling Han would not be an exception. Using a useless item to exchange for a great help, how could someone as smart as the third prince not want to do such a profitable business? But the key point was that he indeed did not have the right to enter the inner treasury. Wait! The third prince tapped his fingers, and said, in a little more than 2 months, it will be father's 60th birthday, and the whole nation will be celebrating. At that time, father will definitely hold a large banquet, and take out some treasures from the imperial treasury for everyone to admire. There is a chance to enter the imperial treasury, but the lock of the inner treasury is the heaven and earth linked lock. Unless one has the key, there is no way to open it. Ling Han's eyes lit up. He had the blood-sucking origin gold in his hands, and he could change it at will. He could open any lock, so this was not a problem for him. He said, "Then I would like to enter the imperial treasury to take a look." The third prince was very smart, and immediately walked towards Ling Han in shock, and said, "Brother Ling has a way to open the heaven and earth linked lock." "Ha, I have learned a little lock-picking skill." Ling Han naturally would not reveal the secret of the blood-sucking origin gold, and casually used an excuse to gloss over it. The third prince thought for a moment, and said, "All right, after I have obtained the person to handle this matter, I will bring Brother Ling into the imperial treasury. However, Brother Ling, I will say the unpleasant things first. There are many precious treasures in the inner treasury, and they are too important. You must not dip your fingers in them, or let alone you, even I will be implicated." "Don't worry, I am not interested in the other things," Ling Han said with a smile. The third prince could not help but roll his eyes. He naturally would not believe Ling Han's words, but in order to obtain Ling Han's full support, he could not care less. Moreover, when the time came, he would be watching from the side, and would definitely not allow Ling Han to act recklessly. There were risks, but they could be controlled. "Then I will take my leave, and wait quietly for the good news from your highness," Ling Han said with a smile. "Brother Ling, please go ahead." The third prince nodded. Ling Han glanced at Ziyan. This girl seemed to have changed into a completely different person, becoming taciturn and even colder. He did not take it to heart. What did it have to do with him? When he returned to his own courtyard in the academy, he saw that both Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan had come, and they both expressed their worry. Master specially went to visit Master Lien afterward, but Master Lien said that he had his own difficulties, and that he would support whatever Feng Yen did, Li Si-chan said. Lu Yutong also said, "I used the power of my clan to investigate Feng Yen, but I could not find anything. It was as if he was like you, suddenly becoming powerful." Ling Han revealed a thoughtful expression. Lian Guangzhu actually said that he would support whatever Feng Yen did. This was a shocking promise. And the greater the power that Feng Yen controlled, the more disadvantageous it would be for Ling Han. Of course, he also had Tianyiji and the Alchemy Institution behind him, and they would definitely not be weaker than the Martial Arts Institution. If he really wanted to fight head-on, then he would definitely drag the Rain country royalty and the 8 great clans into it. The Rain Emperor would definitely not allow this kind of internal strife to occur. Strange, it was because he possessed the ability of alchemy from his last life that he was able to subdue Fu Yuansheng, Wu Songlin, and the other alchemists, but it was probably impossible for him to reach the point where he could make them do anything. Feng Yan's rise was so sudden, and so strange. The Rain country royalty should also be investigating him. If they still can't find anything with the power of one nation, then you don't have to waste any effort, Ling Han said to Lu Yutong. Don't forget yourself, Li Si-chan pointed out, then your rise would not be sudden or strange. Chapter 183. Ling Han's heart stirred, and he asked, "What sword?" 10th tier spirit tool, Demon Birth Sword. Azura Demon Emperor said. This is the sword used by the first Demon Master, and fused with the Demon Master's martial intent as the eye of the formation here. If one wants to refine the arm of a god, the formation must be opened, so the Demon Birth Sword must be taken out. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, although Senior speaks with a strong sense of righteousness, and is even more extravagant, making my little heart beat wildly, how do I know that you aren't that Chaos Origin God in disguise, and actually want to trick me into opening the restriction and letting you out? Ha 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 ha. Azura Demon Emperor laughed loudly, and then said solemnly, this lord can swear on the name of my soul that this lord is Azura Demon Emperor, and definitely not Chaos Origin God. If there is even half a word of falsehood, then let my soul forever fall into the cycle of reincarnation, unable to reincarnate for 10,000 lifetimes. Soul Oath. This was the most solemn oath. The higher the tier of a martial artist, the more they would not dare to make such an oath carelessly, because there was heaven's will in the unseen world. An oath made with one's soul would be engraved by the Tao of heaven, and there would definitely not be a good ending for breaking the oath. Ling Han was a heaven-tier elite in his previous life, so he naturally knew that a soul oath definitely couldn't be faked. However, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Although a soul oath couldn't be faked, the story of Azura Demon Emperor before could be faked, so this oath of his was naturally meaningless. Ling Han pondered whether he should take this risk or not. If he could bring the demon birth sword and the arm of God into the Black Tower, then no matter if there were any schemes or not, he would deal with them all obediently. However, a 10th tier spirit tool was definitely not an issue, but the arm of God was at God tier, on par with the Black Tower, so could he refine it? Moreover, the demon birth sword definitely had a tool spirit, and the arm of God even had the remnant consciousness of Chaos Origin God. They both needed the other party's nod to be taken into the Black Tower, so he didn't have the initiative. Thus, Ling Han didn't dare to make a rash decision. "Youngster, don't you believe this, Lord?" Azura Demon Emperor snorted, revealing a displeased expression. "Fine, this Lord will summon the tool spirit of the demon birth sword, and you can ask it yourself." In a short while, a streak of light swiftly flew over from afar. It really was a sword, and there were many patterns on the sword's body, forming characters one after another. With a glance, Ling Han's head felt as if it was boiling, churning, and extremely uncomfortable. It definitely surpassed the 9th tier, or else Ling Han wouldn't be unable to bear such martial intent with just a glance. "It's indeed a tool spirit." A voice was transmitted from Small Tower. It was connected to Ling Han's consciousness, and could communicate at any time without worrying about anyone knowing. "I am the demon birth sword." This sword shook lightly, and transmitted a divine sense. It was indeed a 10th tier spirit tool. Ling Han couldn't help but feel a surge of joy. He planned to walk the path of the sword, so he naturally desired to possess a high-level spirit tool. If he could obtain the demon birth sword, then he wouldn't have to consider the problem of a weapon before breaking through to the immortal level. "Youngster, do you still have any doubts about this, Lord?" Azura Demon Emperor's voice once again sounded in Ling Han's consciousness. He could only use divine sense to communicate with Ling Han. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face, and he said to Small Tower in his mind, "Can you help me subdue this tool spirit's main body?" Small Tower was silent for a while, as if thinking, and said, "If I use my full battle prowess, I can destroy all existences in this realm, and subdue a 10th tier spirit tool would naturally be a piece of cake. But in the depths of my memories, there is a strong voice telling me that I definitely can't expose myself. 10,000 years ago, in order to become one with you, I used up the little bit of source power that I had just recovered, and in order to allow you to take over my body and be reborn, I used up all the source power that I had just condensed. If I make a move now, without source power to conceal heaven's secrets, my existence will definitely be discovered by many powerful existences. At that time, you will die, and I will be stripped away." Ling Han did not hear the difference between source power and origin power. He sighed, and said, "After talking for so long, you definitely can't make a move. There is 10,000 years time for me to recover source power, and I can make a move once," Small Tower said. Ling Han's expression was strange. In 10,000 years' time, he would either become a god or become a pile of bones. Then, he definitely wouldn't be able to wait for Small Tower to show its might. "However, if you can bring the tool spirit's main body into my body, then I can make a move without any qualms, and suppress it," Small Tower added. In the end, he still had to bring the demon birth sword into the Black Tower. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "How much of what that Azura Demon Emperor said do you think is true? I don't understand people's hearts, so I can't judge whether it's true or false." Small Tower trembled lightly, as if shaking its head. "But based on the divine sense he left on your body, as long as he enters the tower, I can suppress him at will." He had to enter the tower again. Ling Han sighed. This was the most difficult part. It was like he had clearly drawn a good set of cards, but had no chance to play them. No matter how good the cards were, they could only rot in his hands, making him very depressed. N. Ling Han was slightly startled, and turned to look behind him. He heard a rumbling sound, and in the time of a few breaths, 3 coffins slid over as if they had grown legs. Rong Huanxian, he really lingered around like a ghost. Peng, Rong Huanxian jumped out of the copper coffin. His gaze swept over Ling Han, and he couldn't help but reveal an expression of surprise as he said, "You actually didn't get infected by the demonic qi and become a walking corpse like those dregs, even you didn't, what more me?" Ling Han said indifferently. "You mean, you're stronger than me?" Rong Huanxian said with narrowed eyes, revealing a dangerous aura. "Isn't that obvious?" Ling Han said with a smile. Perhaps for a very long time, this guy would become his opponent, so he naturally didn't mind mocking him a bit. Rong Huanxian was enraged, and was about to attack when he suddenly paused, revealing an appearance of listening attentively. Ling Han immediately guessed that the Azura Demon Emperor had told Rong Huanxian about the arm of God and the demon birth sword. Ha ha ha. Rong Huanxian soon laughed loudly. Never would have thought that there would be such a big secret hidden here. It was not in vain that I lost a silver-armored corpse. Ling Han knew that he was already moved, and said, "Rong Huanxian, you have to think clearly, don't throw yourself into this mess." Rong Huanxian smiled proudly. He had the 3 lives corpse casket, which was a 10th-tier spirit tool, so he definitely wouldn't be afraid of the demon birth sword. Even if Chaos Origin God was originally powerful beyond compare, now that it was cut into 9 pieces, how much power would it have left? Moreover, he wasn't an idiot. Could it be that he wouldn't think clearly before acting? Xiao, the tool spirit of the demon birth sword, had already flown up. Rong Huanxian immediately leapt into the copper casket and followed, his speed extremely fast. Ling Han shook his head, and also followed behind. Although he wasn't a chivalrous man who cared for the world, he also didn't wish for the world to fall into chaos, so he naturally had to guard against Rong Huanxian doing something deranged. Rong Huanxian was a disciple of the Thousand Corpse sect, so he couldn't be considered a human anymore. Chapter 184. Ling Han smiled and said, "A few days ago, when I was eating in a restaurant, I accidentally ran into a pair of assassins, and 3 members of the Black Cloud Army died." The eldest imperial prince was startled, and said, "Young Master Han was also there that day?" "Yes." Ling Han nodded and said, "That girl seems to be a member of the royal family, right? She hasn't even reached 30 years old yet, but she has already reached the Sea of Souls realm. How shocking." The great imperial prince's expression immediately darkened. After a moment of silence, he said, "This woman is called Su Kuexian. She entered the palace a few years ago and was given the title of Consort Yun by imperial father. Since young Master Han knows that the power of the nation can help one break through to the flower blossom tier, then he should know that it can also speed up the advancement of one's cultivation level. However, the power of the nation is limited, and imperial father actually spent such a large amount of the fortune of the nation on a woman, Heng." His last sentence was already extremely disgraceful. He actually dared to criticize the current emperor. But it could also be seen how dissatisfied he was with Su Kuexian. When Ling Han recalled Su Kuexian's natural seductiveness, he couldn't help but think to himself, no wonder even the Rain Emperor has fallen head over heels for her. She is indeed a stunningly beautiful woman. The fact that she could lead the Black Cloud Army out of the imperial palace was proof enough. If it wasn't for the emperor's favor, as the current imperial concubine, how could she easily leave the imperial palace? "Does this Yun Fei have any children?" Ling Han casually asked. Fortunately, he didn't. The eldest imperial prince shook his head. Otherwise, with the Rain Emperor and imperial concubine Yun's favor, he and the 3rd imperial prince could forget about fighting for the throne. As the 2 of them spoke, they had already arrived at the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. One by one, They got off the carriage, and a young man came forward to greet them, saying, Sun Ziyan greets the eldest imperial prince. Sun Zi and Ling Han could not help but be moved, and walked towards this young man. He had a good appearance and a slender figure. He should have just broken through to gushing spring tear, as his aura was not very stable yet. Ziyan, you may dispense with the formalities. The eldest prince raised his hands slightly, naturally exuding the aura of someone in a superior position. In Rain Country, the Qi clan was naturally the #1 noble clan. They controlled the country, and their power could overturn the world. However, the Sun clan was only slightly inferior to the Qi clan, so Sun Ziyan was not very wary of the eldest imperial prince. After bowing, he looked towards Ling Han and said, Brother Ling, we finally meet. Come, the other party was waiting for him here. Sun Ziyan, what are you trying to do? Lu Yutong asked coldly. As her master's maid, she naturally had to stand at the front lines. Sun Ziyan revealed a shocked and envious expression. Lu Yutong and Li Xichan were known as the twin beauties of the imperial city, and the number of men who were interested in them could line up several times around the imperial city. He was also one of their admirers. But now, these two delicate flowers were actually plucked by the same man. It really made people envious and jealous. If Ling Han knew what he was thinking right now, he would definitely cry out that he was innocent. In all honesty, he didn't do anything. He was as pure as a little white flower. Sun Ziyan smiled, and said, I just want to resolve a grudge between us, Brother Ling. Oh, there's such a thing, the eldest prince interrupted. It's just a small misunderstanding, Sun Ziyan casually replied. Oh. Ling Han's gaze turned cold. You're saying that your father-in-law coveted my two younger sisters, and after failing to abduct them, he sent people to snatch them away. Such a misunderstanding, tisk tisk. Sun Ziyan revealed an angry expression, but he forcefully restrained himself and said, Brother Ling, your two younger sisters are not in good condition. I apologize to you on behalf of my father-in-law, and will also send a gift of thanks. I hope that Brother Ling can let this matter go, and not do something that will cause both sides to suffer. The eldest prince also nodded, and said with a smile, Since Ziyan is so sincere, why don't Brother Ling give him some face? Lu Yutong was a little worried. She knew Ling Han's personality, and was afraid that Ling Han would directly clash with the eldest prince. Ling Han laughed loudly, and the eldest prince and Sun Ziyan laughed as well, naturally thinking that the misunderstanding had been resolved. No. Ling Han suddenly said at this moment. Cough, cough. The eldest prince and Sun Ziyan instantly could not catch their breath, and they both coughed continuously. Their faces darkened. Since you don't agree to reconcile, why are you laughing so happily? Brother Ling, I am very sincere. Sun Ziyan's voice also became much deeper, and carried a hint of threat. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, I am also very sincere in telling you that there is no chance of this. That father-in-law of yours is a complete scum, and living in this world is too much of a waste of food. Brother Ling, are you declaring war on the Sun clan? Sun Ziyan said darkly. Ho ho, Ziyan, you're too serious. The eldest prince stepped forward to mediate. He did not want to become enemies with the Sun clan before he had even obtained the help that Ling Han brought. Ling Han smiled, and said, Sun Ziyan, can you really represent the Sun clan? You dare to scold me? Sun Ziyan glared. This guy must have done it on purpose, saying his name as Sun Zi and then adding the word yen. Huh, isn't Sun Ziyan your name? Does calling your name mean I'm scolding you? What a strange person. Ling Han shook his head. It's naturally fine if you call my name normally, but you definitely did it on purpose just now. Sun Ziyan said harshly. Ling Han put on an innocent look, and said, What did I call you just now? Sun Ziyan. Sun Ziyan did not hesitate, and imitated Ling Han's tone just now. But the moment he said it, he reacted and instantly flew into a rage, shouting, "Ling Han, you dare to trick me with your intelligence, Sai." Ling Han shook his head. "You're only fit to be a grandson. You're looking for death." Sun Ziyan was furious, and he threw a punch. Ding! Lu Yutong stepped forward, and used the sheath of her sword to block Sun Ziyan's fist. She said coldly, "Sun Ziyan, don't force me to draw my sword." Sun Ziyan took a step back, and stared at Lu Yutong with a vigilant gaze. He could not sense the other's aura, and it was obvious that her cultivation level was higher than his, so he had to treat her with caution. "Ha, everyone here is an important official of the country, there must be no conflict," the eldest imperial prince interrupted, standing between the two of them. Both of them were disciples of great clans. It was fine for them to spar, but if someone died, he, the eldest imperial prince, would not be able to escape the blame. During the crucial period of the fight for the throne, the slightest mistake could cause his dream of becoming the emperor to be ruined. "Go back and have Qin Yun Xiang wash his neck clean. I will personally send him to the guillotine," Ling Han said calmly, but his tone was filled with incomparable determination. Sun Ziyan, on the other hand, calmed down, and said, "Ling Han, must you fight until both sides suffer?" "What do you mean by both sides suffer?" Ling Han said with a smile. Since that's the case, then don't blame me for making my move." Sun Ziyan said coldly. "Let me remind you, in the future, you have to be more careful with those shops. The imperial capital is too big, it's inevitable that some hooligans will run out and cause trouble." Ling Han sighed, and said, "Then I can only exterminate one more shop." His words were very soft, but the eldest imperial prince still heard them, and his expression instantly changed. Chapter 185. Annihilate another Sun clan. The eldest imperial prince could not help but glance at Ling Han. Though he valued Ling Han very much, even if Ling Han had all the alchemists of Rain Country standing behind him, he could not possibly annihilate the Sun clan, because the 8 great clans were all pillars of the country. If it really reached that step, not only would the Rain Emperor make a move, even the ancestor that had always been in hiding would jump out. But Ling Han's calm to the point of indifference did not seem to be words that he had said in a moment of agitation. The deep look in his eyes even caused the eldest imperial prince to feel a chill. How could that be? He was in the 9th layer of gushing spring tier, and already had 1 foot in the spiritual ocean tier. Moreover, he was the eldest imperial prince, and he was actually frightened by the look in a young man's eyes? I hope you're not so stupid." Sun Ziyan did not hear Ling Han's words. He flicked his sleeves, looking extremely displeased. Of course. He had thought that with him stepping forward, it would be a simple matter to mediate the grudge between Ling Han and Qin Yun Xiang, but he had never imagined that Ling Han would not give him any face at all. The eldest imperial prince did not try to persuade him anymore. Ling Han's words just now were obviously meant for him to hear. If he tried to persuade him again, would Ling Han say something even more shocking, and annihilate another Sun clan? That would really be treason. Sun Ziyan turned and left. When he arrived at the main entrance of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, he saw an old man come up to greet him, and said, "Ziyan, what did that brat say?" "It was Qin Yun Xiang." Sun Ziyan revealed a sliver of displeasure. Though he did not care about the lives of a few lowly commoners, this old man actually had that kind of hobby, which made him feel extremely disgusted. But who asked this old man to be his father-in-law? Not willing to give up. He shook his head. Qin Yun Xiang was first shocked, then immediately said angrily, "This brat is relying on the protection of the noble lady of the Qin clan, and actually does not give face to you, Ziyan." Sun Ziyan gave a humph. He naturally knew that Qin Yun Xiang was trying to sow discord between them, but he was indeed very displeased. The eldest imperial prince and the 3rd imperial prince both seemed to have quite a good relationship with this brat. It's not as simple as him sponging off a woman. What? Qin Yunxiang broke out in a cold sweat. The Qin clan was just a small clan. If they really offended the first prince or the third prince, the Qin clan would be exterminated in a matter of minutes. What are you afraid of? Sun Ziyan said coldly. He, with Ziyan blocking for me, of course I have nothing to fear. Qin Yunxiang hurriedly flattered him. Although he was the old man's father-in-law, the two of them could not be mentioned in the same breath. Only then did Sun Ziyan give a humph. He turned around to look at Ling Han and the others who were ascending the stairs, a cold smile at the corners of his lips. Greetings, First Prince. The guards at the entrance of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion were naturally quick-witted people. When they saw the First Prince and the others, they hurriedly bowed in greeting. A small steward immediately came out to welcome them, saying, First Prince, young masters, and noble ladies have graced our pavilion with your presence. Your presence brings light to our humble pavilion. Please come in. Under the guidance of that small steward, they walked up the stairs. There were private rooms on the second and third floors, but there were only a mere 20 private rooms on the third floor. Those were reserved for the current reign emperor, the clan heads of the 8 great clans, the 2 headmasters of Huyang University, the pavilion master of Tianyi, and other super important figures. The others, even the first and third imperial princes, could only get a private room on the second floor. Thus, when they arrived at the second floor, they naturally had to make a turn. Esteemed guests, your private rooms are on the third floor, that small steward said in a very strange tone. Everyone stopped in their tracks. How could it be on the third floor? Among them, if there was anyone with the noblest status, it would definitely be the eldest imperial prince. But even the eldest imperial prince did not have the right to ascend to the third floor, unless he ascended the throne and became the ruler of the world. Young Master Han is the most esteemed guest of our pavilion, so he naturally has the right to ascend to the third floor, the small steward said as he bowed respectfully towards Ling Han. What? Everyone was stunned. How could this be possible? This brat was only 16 or 17 years old, and was on the 9th floor of the Pali Pavilion. What right did he have to ascend to a private room on the 3rd floor, and stand side by side with the clan heads of the 8 great clans, the 2 headmasters, the big boss of Alchemy, and even the current reign emperor? Ling Han glanced at the small steward, and the latter gave him a friendly smile. He knew that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion must have gone to Tianyi to make inquiries in order to ascertain the origins of the foundation building pill, and thus found out that this pill was concocted by Ling Han. Foundation building pill, an alchemical pill close to earth grade. This meant that Ling Han was not only a black grade high-level alchemist, but also an earth grade alchemist in the future. This kind of person was not qualified to ascend to the 3rd floor. Haha, thanks to young Master Han, I can also go to the 3rd floor to have a seat, the eldest imperial prince said with a laugh, but there was a sliver of confusion and jealousy in his eyes, as well as shock. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion was a business, so how could they act recklessly? Since they had given Ling Han a private room on the 3rd floor, it meant that Ling Han had the corresponding ability, or rather, background. This shocked him. What right did Ling Han have to be ranked alongside the clan heads of the 8 great clans and big bosses of alchemy? Sun Ziyan's expression instantly darkened. Previously, he had looked down on Ling Han, thinking that he was someone who lived off a woman, and had somehow managed to latch onto the thighs of the eldest and 3rd imperial princes. But from the looks of it now, it was obvious that he was wrong. Even the eldest imperial prince did not have the right to ascend to a private room on the 3rd floor, what more to get one for Ling Han. Even he was like this, so Qin Yunxiang was even more shocked. He was so scared that his face had turned pale, and he secretly regretted why he was so unlucky to actually bump into a malefic existence like Ling Han. Seeing Ling Han ascend step by step, Sun Ziyan revealed a complicated expression. Was he going to continue going down this path and go against Ling Han? Obviously, Ling Han's background could be shockingly powerful. Taking another look at Qin Yunxiang, he could not help but think of that seductive and alluring concubine of his, and his gaze became firm. He was definitely going to interfere in this matter. Not only for the sake of that concubine of his, but also for the sake of his own reputation. As the young master of the Sun clan, no one should think of stepping on him. There were only a mere 20 private rooms on the third floor, but each private room was extremely spacious, enough to accommodate a few dozen people. Moreover, there were beautiful female attendants accompanying them, serving food and water in a very attentive manner. Ling Han and the others all sat down. Hun Yo, on the other hand, knelt on Ling Han's lap with a serious expression, her small body straightened up. "Young Master Han, is this your sister?" the eldest imperial prince asked with a smile. "You can say so." Ling Han smiled, and rubbed Hun Yo's head dotingly. The little girl immediately showed a satisfied expression, and like a little kitten, she rubbed her head against Ling Han's chest. The eldest imperial prince looked closely at Hun Yo for a while, and could not help but look shocked. He pointed at Hun Yo in shock, and said, She's actually in the poly tier. This little girl was only 5 or 6 years old, but shockingly already had a cultivation level in the poly tier. This was practically terrifying. Hun Yo glared at the eldest imperial prince in dissatisfaction. Ling Han hated being pointed at by others, and she was the most deeply influenced by Ling Han, so she was naturally the same. Her small mouth opened wide, revealing her little white teeth, and she had the urge to bite someone. "Nyo, be good," Ling Han said with a smile. Hun Yo instantly withdrew her fierce expression and smiled sweetly. Yet the eldest imperial prince was still shocked. How could there possibly be such a young polyteer in this world? This was too unreal. Indeed, birds of a feather flocked together. Ling Han was a monster, and the people around him were also monsters. Chapter 186. Many thanks for everyone's presence. An old man dressed in embroidered robes walked onto the auction stage and began to host the evening's auction. This old man knows that today, many people have come for the building foundation pills. However, today, this old man has also prepared a few good things, so please don't just spend your money on the building foundation pills. Everyone roared with laughter when they heard this, and the atmosphere in the surroundings instantly became relaxed. However, this was only temporary. Once the foundation building pill appeared, it was guaranteed that everyone would be envious. One foundation building pill could allow an elite at the peak of spiritual ocean tier to build his spiritual pedestal and advance to a higher cultivation level, becoming the most influential person in Rain Country. Which person or clan wouldn't go crazy over it? How many spiritual pedestal tier elites were there in Rain Country? Even the 8 great clans and the imperial family only had 2 or 3 spiritual pedestal tier elites on the surface. Even if there were a few hidden aces behind them, if a clan had 5, it would definitely be terrifying. It was said that there would be 9 foundation building pills today. If they could all be obtained by one party, then under the best circumstances, they could allow 9 elites at the peak of spiritual ocean tier to break through to spiritual pedestal tier. What kind of concept was that? Instantly surpassing the 8 great clans? Of course, even if they took the foundation building pill, it was impossible for everyone to successfully break through, but as long as there was a 50% chance, there would still be 4 or 5 people, and if there was a 1 in 3 chance, there would still be 3. Whoever didn't go crazy would be a pig. If the pill was expensive, then so be it. As long as they could break through to spiritual pedestal tier, how much money would they have to earn back? Everyone laughed loudly, but there was a look of determination in their eyes. Even if they had to go bankrupt today, they would obtain a foundation building pill. Ling Han felt an undercurrent of excitement, and couldn't help but smile. Who knew, the foundation building pill might be auctioned off for a sky-high price today. Fortunately, there were too few spiritual pedestal tier elites in Rain Country. If they went to a place where martial art was more flourishing and spiritual pedestal tier elites were as common as dogs, then how much would the foundation building pill be worth? I didn't think that so many people would come. I was full of confidence before, and thought that I could obtain at least one foundation building pill, and it would be best if I could obtain two, but now I'm a little nervous. Even one foundation building pill is not guaranteed, the eldest imperial prince said, shaking his head. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, the eldest imperial prince has yet to advance into the spiritual ocean tier, and no matter what, he still needs another 5 years before he can attempt to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier. Who knows, there might be new foundation building pills appearing by then. The eldest imperial prince sighed, and said, young Master Han has just arrived at the imperial city, so you are not clear about this. At least, in my memory, there has never been an alchemical pill like this that can help you break through. Not to mention a high-grade alchemical pill like the foundation building pill, even the purple origin pill used to break through to gushing spring tier is extremely rare. Ling Han's expression immediately became strange. The material of that purple origin pill was the dark moon grass, which could be used to expand the Dantian space. Even heaven tier elites would be moved, so how could this guy not want it? I wonder who provided those 9 foundation establishment pills. Today, we're definitely going to make a killing, the eldest prince said with some envy. How wealthy was the Tian clan? Even the eldest imperial prince would be envious of them. Obviously, he believed that the 9 foundation building pills could be auctioned off at a sky-high price that even he would not be able to resist. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both turned their beautiful eyes towards Ling Han. This guy who was going to make a killing was precisely this lazy young man, and he did not seem to take it seriously at all. However, the foundation building pill is an alchemical pill that is close to earth grade. Even an earth-grade alchemist has a very high chance of failure when concocting it. In my opinion, at least 20 to 30 batches of ingredients would be needed to successfully concoct these 9 foundation building pills. Based on this calculation, though there is still a profit to be made, it would still be within a reasonable range, the eldest imperial prince said in a very certain tone, changing the topic of the conversation. His eyes turned around, and saw that Ling Han and the others all had strange expressions on their faces. He could not help but be surprised, and asked, what's wrong with you all? Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were both trying very hard to hold back their laughter. It was very difficult for them to do so. Ling Han was the one who had concocted these 9 foundation building pills. Moreover, he had done it in one go. Originally, he should only be able to concoct 8 pills in a single batch, but through his exquisite purification technique, he managed to concoct 9 pills in the end. It was practically more than 100% success rate. And you said in such a serious and confident manner that you would need 20 to 30 batches to be able to concoct 9 pills. How could you not make them laugh their heads off? Of course, the 2 girls were still very reserved, and gave the eldest imperial prince a lot of face. Thus, they were both forcefully holding back their laughter, but their expressions were naturally very strange. Ling Han chuckled, and asked, how much money has your imperial highness brought today? 20 million. Rich man, Ling Han was not stingy with his praise, because this money would very soon enter his own pockets. He was the boy of wealth, after all, so of course everyone liked him. You flatter me, you flatter me. The eldest imperial prince pretended to be modest. In truth, this wealth was more or less all his savings. After all, he was only an imperial prince. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both shook their heads, thinking, eldest imperial prince, you are still pretending to be proud, but you don't know that your money has already been regarded as his own by that guy. Ladies and gentlemen, the 9 foundation building pills will be auctioned off in 9 separate batches, interspersed throughout the entire auction, so please do not leave. After the joint appraisal of several alchemists from Tianyuji invited by our pavilion, the quality of these 9 foundation building pills are all 13 stars. Ladies and gentlemen should know what a 13-star quality means, right? The auctioneer said with a smile. He clapped his hands, and said, Now, the first foundation building pill will be auctioned off as an opening to liven up the atmosphere. The base price will start from 5 million, and each bid must not be lower than 100,000. After these words were said, those who were rich and overbearing were clearly dissatisfied, while those who were cash-strapped revealed smiles. If all 9 foundation building pills were auctioned off together, then there would definitely be very few people who could afford them, and in the end, they would not be able to reach an excessively shocking price. But if they were auctioned off one by one, then the competition would be very big. Under extreme circumstances, a single pill could exceed the sum of the other 8 pills. Thus, those who were rich and overbearing were naturally unhappy. How many potential competitors would they have to face? 5 million. 5,500,000. 5,700,000. Very soon, the sounds of bids rang out incessantly. Because the publicly accepted value of the foundation building pill was around 10 million, everyone was very eager to increase the price, and it was far from reaching the bottom line in their hearts. The eldest imperial prince also began to bid. However, his identity was completely useless now, but no one backed down because of his bid. 10 million. In only 2 minutes, the price of the first foundation building pill had broken through 10 million. From this moment onwards, the number of people bidding obviously decreased. This was already close to the true value of the foundation building pill. Moreover, there were still 8 pills left, so there was no need to rush to the point of running out of supplies. After a few rounds of bidding, the first foundation building pill was finally sold for a price of 13 million. It was won by the Li clan of the 8 great clans. It was an old man who was at the peak of spiritual ocean tier. It was obvious that he had bought it for his own use, so his face was filled with joy. If he was lucky, he would be in spiritual pedestal tier after going into seclusion. Spiritual ocean and spiritual pedestal tier, those were 2 completely different worlds. Eldest imperial prince, if you want the foundation building pill, then it's best that you make your move as soon as possible. The longer I delay, the higher the price will be, Ling Han said to the eldest imperial prince. The rarer an item is, the more valuable it is. Chapter 187. Too weak, his present strength was really too weak. The reason why he could barely arouse a sliver of martial intent was because he possessed a sliver of the divine sense of the heaven tier. Ling Han nodded. It was alright, at least this sword was genuine 10th tier material, and although only a sliver of martial intent was aroused, how powerful was the shattering void tier? Even a sliver of martial intent was very kick-ass. Moreover, the stronger he was, the more he would be able to arouse the demon birth sword's power, and sooner or later, he would make this 10th tier spirit tool shine again. The problem was, his present strength was too weak. If it was really exposed that he possessed a 10th tier spirit tool, then how many covetous gazes would it attract? He secretly decided that he would try not to use the demon birth sword unless it was a crucial moment. Now it was time to meet that demon emperor. Ling Han looked outside through the black tower and saw that Rong Huanxian was indeed still searching for him, looking as if he was determined to find him after digging 3 feet into the ground. His figure flashed, and he appeared in the outside world. Seeing Ling Han appear without a sound, Rong Huanxian instantly revealed a shocked expression. If Ling Han could appear by his side like this, then wouldn't he be able to easily succeed once he launched a sneak attack? Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Now, should I call you Rong Huanxian, or Azura Demon Emperor?" Rong Huanxian's soul should have already been erased, and now Azura Demon Emperor's soul occupied this physical body. Youngster, this lord originally wanted to take over your physical body, but didn't think that you'd actually run away so quickly. Rong Huanxian said with a smile. You can call this lord whatever you want. When this lord reigns over the world, this lord will naturally recover the honorific title of Azura Demon Emperor. Ling Han's right hand shook, and the demon birth sword already appeared in his hand. He brandished the sword, and said, "If you die here, then there won't be a future." Ha 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 ha. Rong Huanxian laughed loudly, then shook his head. Perhaps you can destroy this lord's physical body, but it doesn't matter, this lord can still occupy another one. If this lord was so easy to destroy, how could I have possibly been divided into 9 parts and suppressed in various mystery realms? So you weren't lying about this. You really were dismembered, Ling Han said with a smile. Rong Huanxian's expression turned cold, and he said, in front of this lord, you dare to speak so rudely? What, you still want me to call you lord? Ling Han said with a smile. In the past, who knows how many people knelt before this lord? Even those who were countless times stronger than you couldn't enter this lord's eyes, so who do you think you are? Rong Huanxian said disdainfully. All right, a real man doesn't boast about his past achievements. I am indeed only in the gushing spring tier, but you aren't much better. Ling Han waved his hand. Damn brat. Rong Huanxian's expression turned stern. Just as well, the owner of this body harbors extremely deep killing intent towards you, and this lord also wants to kill you, so die. He brazenly attacked, striking out with a palm. Innumerable flashes of black light surged, turning into a long snake-like attack that shot towards Ling Han. Ling Han was unafraid. Although Azura Demon Emperor had escaped, it was equivalent to being trapped in the body of a gushing spring-tier martial artist, which greatly reduced his threat. Otherwise, he wouldn't have appeared at all. Anyways, even if the sky collapsed, there would be someone taller to hold it up. He shook the demon birth sword and slashed towards Rong Huanxian. Damn it, you actually managed to erase this lord's consciousness on the sword. Rong Huanxian originally had a hint of a sneer at the corner of his lips. He wanted to order the tool spirit to unleash its might and directly erase Ling Han, but he discovered that the order he issued was like a stone sinking into the ocean. He should have immediately realized that his divine sense was missing by a sliver, but who asked him to fuse with Rong Huanxian's physical body, causing his sensitivity to be greatly reduced? He actually only realized that something was wrong when he couldn't command it. This brat was too strange. He had spent several tens of thousands of years of effort to slowly permeate into the demon birth sword bit by bit, eroding the tool spirit and making this treasured sword his own, greatly weakening the formation's power. Only then was Rong Huanxian able to take the demon birth sword away. He never thought that in just over a day's work, Ling Han would completely erase his divine sense from the demon birth sword. No. The tool spirit of this treasured sword should have been destroyed as well, because his consciousness had already fused with the tool spirit, reaching the point where they would live and die together. Since his divine sense was destroyed, it meant that the tool spirit was also dead. He breathed a sigh of relief. Otherwise, if a 10th tier spirit tool showed its might, his current physical body really wouldn't be able to withstand it. Although he was an extremely special life form, developing from a pure soul state at the very beginning, without a physical body, he would still be rootless duckweed. Moreover, being suppressed for several tens of thousands of years, his vitality would definitely be greatly damaged. Previously, in order to stop Ling Han, he had expended too much demonic qi. Now that he had just occupied a physical body, if he were to immediately change it, he would be even more seriously injured. Thus, he didn't want this physical body to be destroyed. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "It would be a waste for you to use this sword." Ugh! Even with Azura Demon Emperor's temperament, he still had the urge to curse. With his status, just the fact that he had been suppressed for several tens of thousands of years could scare people half to death, and a junior actually dared to look down on him. So what if you have a 10th tier spirit tool? It's impossible for you to unleash its full power, so you'd better let this lord send you to your grave. Rong Huanxian sneered, opened his mouth, and spat. Wisps of black qi surged out, turning into multiple black thorns. This wasn't Azura Demon Emperor's demonic qi, but Rong Huanxian's corpse qi. Ling Han's expression was stern. He raised the demon birth sword horizontally, the tip of the sword slightly pointing downwards. Endless sword intent condensed, and multiple small-scale vortexes actually appeared in the surroundings. Rong Huanxian's expression instantly changed, and he said, "What sword technique is this? Why does this lord seem to remember seeing it somewhere before?" Mysterious 3000 Ling Han drew his sword, and origin power surged out, turning into a 5-colored light. This was the change after the gushing spring tear. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth condensed one after another, turning into multiple swords of origin power. There were actually more than 100 of them. In the first place, the 3 styles of black origin could only be cultivated after the gushing spring tear. Previously, he had relied on the power of the gushing spring tear to use it, but in the end, he was still unable to unleash the true might of the 3 styles of black origin. Now that he had reached the gushing spring tear, at least this mysterious 3000 finally revealed its true prowess. This sword intent, this is the sword technique of the Heaven's Sword Palace. Rong Huanxian's eyes suddenly narrowed, revealing an obvious look of fear. However, the attack had arrived, so he could only parry. His hands moved in a flurry, and one after another, black chi surged out. It was impossible to tell whether it was demonic chi or corpse chi. Peng, 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 100 swords pierced through, and the sword light was blazing, turning Rong Huanxian into a sieve. Rong Huanxian used one hand to protect his head, and the other to protect his heart. Both were entangled by black-colored demonic chi, and the other parts of his body were riddled with holes, with blood gushing out violently. He lowered his hands. His arms had been sliced to the point that white bones could be seen, but his head and heart were completely protected. Heaven, sword, palace. Rong Huanxian said word by word. He gritted his teeth, appearing to be extremely furious. One after another, black chi circulated within his body, and his wounds immediately healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 188. The eldest imperial prince, however, breathed a sigh of relief. The other party had finally raised the price, so his 20 million was safe. Ling Han laughed, and said, "Old dog, if I suddenly change my mind now and stop bidding, would you directly faint from fright?" It's just 20 million, I don't care about it." In front of so many people, Qin Yunxiang could not lose face no matter what, so he immediately calmed himself down and retorted in a steady tone. "This esteemed guest on the 3rd floor, are you going to raise the price or not? If you are not going to raise the price, please do not interrupt," the auctioneer reminded him. "Raise, money, it's just a worldly possession." Ling Han smiled, 30 million, pooh. The 3rd imperial prince had just taken a sip of tea to calm himself down, but upon hearing the bid of 30 million, he instantly spat it out. Thankfully, he turned his head in time, or else he would have been completely humiliated if he had spat it out on the female attendant. Cough, cough, cough. He could not stop coughing, and his face was completely red as he said, "Young Master Han, did you just bid 30 million? That's right. I think that with the eldest imperial prince's wealth, lending me 30 million is just a small matter," Ling Han said with a laugh. "Small your sister, that was 30 million, not 30 million drops of silver, just a small matter." "Young Master Han, are you trying to harm me?" the eldest imperial prince said with some bitterness. If Ling Han could not fork out the money, it was very possible that this debt would be placed on his head. Who asked them to be in the same private room? 30 million, just thinking about it caused the eldest imperial prince's face to darken. He could only earn 10 million in 5 years. Hee. Ling Han smiled, but still did not explain. In the private room on the 2nd floor, Sun Ziyan laughed loudly, and said, "This prodigal is really muddle-headed, throwing 30 million into the water just like that. Ha, come, continue to raise the price." Qin Yunxiang also looked at Qin Ziyan with bitterness in his eyes. "You want to raise the price just because you say so?" 30 million, if Ling Han really clapped his hands and stopped bidding, then he would have to sell off 1/3 of the Qin clan's assets. At that time, it would be even more impossible to resist Ling Han's malicious low-price competition. 31 million, Qin Yunxiang said through clenched teeth. After saying this price, he felt his heart beating extremely fast, as if it was about to jump out of his throat. Up until now, he had never spent 30 million in one go. No, he hadn't even spent 10 million before. This made his blood rush to his head. His face was blood red, and his head could explode at any moment. The eldest imperial prince once again breathed a sigh of relief. He stretched out a hand to wipe the sweat off his forehead, and a sliver of cold sweat actually appeared on his forehead. 30 million. To say nothing of him, perhaps even the current reign emperor would have to think twice about this. That's great, there's an idiot taking over. He stared at Ling Han, intending to stop him if Ling Han had the intention to bid again. Ling Han smiled. If he stopped bidding now, Qin Yunxiang would definitely want to die. This was a good opportunity to destroy the Qin family's finances, but Ling Han did not want to miss out on the 3 swift cloud talismans because of this. 40 million. He called out a new price at the speed of lightning. With a paw, the chair that the eldest imperial prince was sitting on actually cracked. This was because he was too agitated, and his origin power leaked out uncontrollably, shattering the chair that was made of good quality sandalwood. Young Master Han, you've gone too far. The eldest imperial prince shook his head. He definitely could not fork out 40 million, so if the Spirit Treasures Pavilion came knocking, he could only cut all ties with Ling Han. In any case, it was Ling Han who had called out the price, so the money would naturally be coming from him. On this side, he was once again on tenterhooks. On the other side, Qin Yunxiang naturally breathed a sigh of relief. This time, he did not dare to increase the price no matter what. Sun Ziyan saw this, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of his lips. He said, "Sir, I would like to ask, if you bid for a price but cannot fork out the money, what should you do?" "Of course, according to the rules of our pavilion, cripple your cultivation, and never step into the Spirit Treasures Pavilion again." The auctioneer immediately answered. "Fine." Sun Ziyan humphed coldly, and said, "I suspect that this esteemed guest on the 3rd floor cannot fork out so much money, and has been competing maliciously with us all along." N. The auctioneer's gaze hardened. "Since young Master Sun has raised a doubt, then I shall verify it." He turned and left, walking backstage. The eldest imperial prince's expression instantly darkened. If they were chased out because of maliciously competing, where would his face be? Wait, this brat couldn't be doing this on purpose, right? Deliberately making him lose face, so as to remove an obstacle for the 3rd imperial prince's ascension? Before he could finish his thought, the auctioneer had already returned, and said, "I have just confirmed with a sir in the pavilion. This esteemed guest on the 3rd floor is definitely able to fork out 40 million. Furthermore, even if this esteemed guest does not have a single copper coin, our pavilion is also willing to offer a limit of 1 billion. Pu, everyone spluttered, and all of them coughed incessantly. A limit of 1 billion, what kind of concept was that? Ling Han could completely take away an item worth 1 billion without spending a single cent, and everything would be paid for by the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Could even the clan heads of the 8 great clans obtain such an honor? The eldest imperial prince was also so shocked that his mouth was agape, and there was a strong shock in his eyes. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion really valued Ling Han too much, didn't they? Not only did they give him a private room on the 3rd floor, they even offered a limit of 1 billion. Thinking about it, even he was green with envy. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "Since I've proven my wealth, then courtesy demands reciprocation. Please prove your wealth as well. I'm also very suspicious. Are you all so poor that you're trying to compete with me maliciously?" When these words came out, Sun Ziyan's and Qin Yunxiang's expressions changed at the same time. They definitely could not fork out 30 million in cash. I am a member of the Sun clan. Could it be that I am unable to fork out a mere 30 million? Sun Ziyan said very unyieldingly. That's more like it if the clan head of the Sun clan were to say it. A mere junior, To be able to fork out 3 million is already not bad, someone sneered. It was naturally Sun Ziyan's rival. That's right, we have to investigate, or else it would be unfair, someone else jeered. For someone as young and energetic as Sun Ziyan, he naturally had no lack of enmity with others. It was just that everyone was wary of each other and did not start a war. At this time, there would definitely be someone who would kick him when he was down. Please cooperate, young Master Sun, the auctioneer said. Since they had already examined Ling Han's wealth, they naturally had to examine Sun Ziyan's and Qin Yunxiang's as well, or else it would be unfair. The most important thing in an auction was fairness, and what everyone hated the most was malicious competition. Someone from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion immediately entered Sun Ziyan and Qin Yun's private room. After a while, the auctioneer said, according to the results of our investigation, young Master Sun and old Master Chen's total cash is 9 million, very far from 30 million. When these words came out, quite a few people sneered. If they were not powerful spiritual ocean-tier warriors who had come specifically for the foundation building pill, who would bring several tens of millions in cash. This time, Sun Ziyan was going to lose all face. Sun Ziyan and Qin Yunxiang were immediately expelled from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, because it was Qin Yunxiang who had made the bid, and he himself did not have any cultivation, so there was no need to cripple his cultivation. However, the two of them could not enter the Spirit Treasures Pavilion for the rest of their lives. Chapter 189. Because it involved malicious bidding, the previous price was naturally invalid. Ling Han made another bid, easily winning the 3 Swift Cloud Talismans with 10 million. Almost no one made a bid, because everyone knew of Ling Han's wealth. He could throw out 40 million without even blinking, and there was a terrifying limit of 1 billion. If anyone angered him, when something they needed appeared later, Ling Han would also come to take a bite. Who could stand that? Very soon, someone from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion delivered the 3 Spirit Talismans. As for the money, there was no need to give it now, it was the Spirit Treasures Pavilion who gave Ling Han the money. The eldest Imperial Prince was both shocked and curious. Where did Ling Han get so much money, and how did he get so much attention from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion? He naturally knew Ling Han's background. Aside from when he was just born, this guy was a complete country boy. If the Ling family was placed in the imperial city, they wouldn't even be qualified to be called a clan. But Ling Han suddenly rose to prominence, and it had only been half a year. This was truly a miracle, and no one could understand it at all. The auction continued, and aside from a few inconspicuous small items, the 3rd foundation building pill appeared on the stage. This time, the eldest imperial prince fought for it with all his might, and there were many people who had the same idea as him. Very soon, the price of this pill was pushed up to the high of 20 million. This eldest imperial prince could only stare, secretly regretting that he didn't act decisively the last 2 times. Now, he couldn't even get a single pill for 20 million. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion sold almost everything. Not only were there medicinal pills and treasures, there were also various materials, cultivation techniques, martial arts techniques, and even treasure maps. However, there were no spirit tools on the stage this time, or else Ling Han would want to get his hands on one. Because the martial arts techniques and cultivation techniques being auctioned were too inferior, Ling Han naturally had no interest in them at all. He fell into a deep sleep, he didn't need to buy foundation building pills anyway. The 4th, 5th, 6th, as the number of foundation building pills decreased, the price also increased. The 8th pill was even sold for a high price of 28 million, more than twice the price of the first pill. This made the Sea of Souls realm warrior of the Li family chuckle non-stop. Although the 13 million he had sold at the beginning had made him feel a great deal of heartache, now that he was compared to now, he was naturally happy. There was only 1 pill left, and there was almost no suspense. The transaction price of this foundation establishment pill would definitely exceed 30 million. Who knew how long it would be until the next time there would be new foundation building dawn? 20 million. Sure enough, as soon as the base price of 5 million was announced, someone immediately called out a high price of 20 million. Because this was inevitable, then what was the point of dilly-dallying under 20 million? Ling Han couldn't help but clap his hands and say, I like this kind of person. Straightforward. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both covered their mouths and giggled. Who wouldn't like someone giving them money? However, the eldest imperial prince could not make heads or tails of it. He had thought that Ling Han was a straightforward person and admired this kind of person. He could not help but ask himself if he was a straightforward person. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for him to become friends with Ling Han. 25 million. There were still many people who were straightforward. One person directly increased the bid by 5 million. 26 million. 27 million. 28 million. 29 million. It seemed that 30 million was a threshold. After this price was called out, everyone fell silent, and no one else made a bid for a while. The publicly accepted price of foundation building Dawn was around 10 million, but because there was no supply, the price was raised to over 20 million. However, no one's money came from nowhere, so it naturally could not be squandered. Moreover, aside from alchemists, who could fork out a huge sum of money over 10 million. That was definitely the wealth of a force, so how could it be squandered so easily? Martial artists spent most of their time on cultivation, so where would they find the time to earn money? For example, the Ling family had several hundred people doing business to earn money to support the several dozen members of the clan to learn martial art and protect the wealth of the Ling family. Precisely because they were spending the money of a clan or force, it was inevitable that they would be restrained and have to consider the limit, 30 million. Someone finally broke the silence. This was a spiritual ocean tier elite from a mid-tier clan. For the 8 great clans, an additional spiritual pedestal tier elite was only an additional top-tier battle prowess. It was very significant, but not enough to cause a fundamental change. But for a mid-tier clan, the appearance of a spiritual pedestal tier elite was definitely a rebirth, a fundamental change. Thus, the mid-tier clans were even more eager to obtain foundation building Dawn, and were even crazier about it, 41 million. 42 million, 43 million. Finally, there were only 3 clans left. All of them were bidding with red eyes, looking like they would give up everything they had to obtain the last foundation building Dawn. Eating the foundation building Dawn would only have a 10 to 20% chance of breaking through, why do you two bother to compete with me? Someone said. Then Brother Ma, why don't you give this chance to me? Another person said. This is a 13 stars foundation building Dawn, so it's not just a 10 to 20% chance, but close to 30%. The third person snorted coldly. If you can't afford it, don't embarrass yourself. Then let's do it. In the end, the final price was set at 49 million. Everyone could guess that the price of the last foundation building Dawn would definitely be the highest, but it actually almost reached 50 million, which still made everyone speechless. An auction was like this. There didn't need to be too many rich people, as long as there were 2 who were willing to fight for it. Just like when Ling Han and Qin Yunxiang fought for the Swift Cloud Talisman, the price also soared to 40 million, but Qin Yunxiang didn't have that much cash. Ling Han calculated for a moment, and was also slightly shocked. That was because the 9 foundation building pills had been sold for a total of 225 million. Even if he deducted the 14% processing fee, that was still more than double the selling price of a single foundation building pill for 10 million. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan also did some calculations, and they were both shocked in their hearts. Such a huge sum of money was more than enough to equal the annual income of a rich and powerful family. Total income, not total profit. In other words, Ling Han had earned more than a great clan's entire year's accumulation in just one day. Alchemists earned too much money. Aside from Ling Han, which alchemist would not be able to concoct 9 foundation building Dawn without exploding dozens of cauldrons? And if it was an earth-grade alchemist, would an earth-grade alchemist need something as mundane as gold and silver? If an Earth-grade alchemist really concocted an Earth-grade medium-level or even high-level precious pill, even if he sold the whole Rain country, he wouldn't be able to obtain it. The auction this time ended successfully, and Ling Han went backstage to settle the bill. The eldest imperial prince naturally thought that he was going to pay, and definitely wouldn't think that he was going to collect money. Moreover, the amount was so much that even he, the eldest imperial prince, had to stop breathing. Young Master Ling, the 9 foundation building Dawn were sold for a total of 225 million. After deducting the 14% processing fee, and adding on the overdraft of 10 million from before, there's 183.5 million left. Jia Bo-yun handed a stack of silver notes to Ling Han. Of course, he couldn't really use gold and silver to pay for such a large sum of money. He already knew that Ling Han was about to become a black-grade high-level alchemist, and even had a chance of breaking through to Earth-grade. Thus, he used honorifics, hoping that Ling Han would be able to concoct an Earth-grade alchemical pill that would allow a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator to break through. Otherwise, with his status, there was no need for him to be so courteous. Ling Han smiled as he received the stack of silver notes, but did not directly put them away. He was sure that Jia Bo-yun would not dare to embezzle his money. Chapter 190. After the auction ended, everyone naturally returned to their own homes. Those who bought the item they liked were naturally happy, while those who didn't shook their heads and sighed. Ling Han was the biggest winner today, earning a huge sum of almost 200 million. If this was spread out, there would probably be people who would come to rob him midway. This one haul could last a lifetime. Thankfully, there were no such blind people. Returning to Huyang University, Ling Han slept soundly. A huge sum of 1 or 200 million was no different from waste paper in his eyes, so he didn't need to count it like a money grubber. Early the next morning, he naturally woke up to cultivate as usual. Now, his advancement was too fast. 2 days ago, he had just reached the 9th layer of poly, but now he was already close to the late stage of the 9th layer. One more step and he would be at the peak, able to break through to the gushing spring tier. Should I try that possibility? Ling Han asked in his mind after he had finished cultivating. In his last life, he had entered many historical sites, so he naturally obtained many arts and martial arts techniques, as well as some handwritten notes that he suspected belonged to a shattering void tier elite, which mentioned one possibility. 10th layer of poly 9 was the extreme number of heaven and earth, so 9 was respected in this world. The most respected one was the emperor of the mortal world, and so was martial art. Whether from body refining or heaven tier, 9 layers was the extreme. And from body refining to heaven tier, there were actually 9 tiers. The last shattering void tier was to break through the shackles and become a god. It was a bridge to the other side, and could be considered as the escaping one. However, an ancient mighty figure had mentioned that every realm could be cultivated to the extreme, or even to perfection. The handwritten note that Ling Han obtained only mentioned that poly tier could form the 10th origin nucleus, breaking through the extreme number of 9, and capturing the escaping one, true perfection. The benefits of this were endless. After poly was gushing spring, which was the spring that turned origin nuclei into origin power, and after gushing spring was spiritual ocean, which turned the spring's mouth into an endless sea of origin power. Spiritual pedestal tier, flower blossom tier, spiritual infant tier, deity transformation tier, heaven tier, and the following tiers were all closely related. From this point alone, the poly tier was actually the foundation of martial art, and the relationship was extremely profound. The body refinement realm only tempered one's flesh and blood, tendons and bones, while the poly realm opened one's dantian. It could be said that one had truly embarked on the path of cultivation. Therefore, cultivating the extremity of the human body in the poly realm and achieving perfection would benefit one for a lifetime. The problem was that the ancient Almighty had only mentioned a theoretical possibility and had not actually done it. This was because he had only considered this problem after he had reached a very high realm. However, time could not be reversed and he had to start cultivating from the Pali realm again. There was a huge gap in the martial art of this continent, and a large number of pill recipes were lost. Presumably, some great calamity had happened in the era of that almighty. Anyways, this idea of his didn't spread and wasn't put into practice, but was lost in history, until the handkerchief was discovered by Ling Han. For Ling Han at that time, this handkerchief was obviously useless, but who would have thought that his physical body would be shattered by the Black Tower, and his soul experienced 10,000 years and was reborn in a youth's body, giving him a chance to start all over again. It's as if there's heaven's will in the unseen world. Ling Han pinched his chin, appearing a bit hesitant. Forming the 10th nucleus was no joke. 9 was the extreme number, and that was an absolute balance. However, forcefully inserting the 10th nucleus would undoubtedly break this balance and lead to a great calamity. Otherwise, with so many elites and geniuses in each generation, how could no one think of 10 or even 20 nuclei? This naturally showed how difficult it was to take this step, or even impossible. Forget it, I'll think about it after I reach the peak of the 9th layer. Ling Han shook his head, no longer thinking about this matter. At noon, he received a piece of good news and a piece of bad news. The good news was that Mo Gao came out of seclusion and successfully advanced to Gushing Spring Tier. Congratulations on breaking through, Teacher Mo. After Ling Han sensed a powerful wave of origin power, he immediately rushed to Mo Gao's courtyard. Sure enough, he soon saw Mo Gao walk out of his house. Although he looked a bit sloppy, his spirit was shockingly strong. Ha 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 ha, after dragging it out for more than 10 years, I finally broke through, Mo Gao said ruefully. I believe that with Teacher Mo's heart of sword intent, you can easily cut through the obstacles of martial art and advance to a higher tier. Ling Han smiled. This was not an exaggeration. With a sword heart that was close to forming, Mo Gao's future cultivation path would be smooth. As the saying goes, great talents mature slowly, and he would welcome a great explosion. Mo Gao smiled. As a martial artist, how could he not desire to increase his tier? It was just that in comparison, he was more passionate about the sword. Now that sword heart was forming and his tier was also increasing, how could he not be satisfied? Your cultivation level. Mo Gao's expression suddenly changed, and he pointed at Ling Han with one hand, his face filled with shock. 9th layer of Pali. Suddenly, he felt like he was about to faint. Previously, when Ling Han had just arrived, he was only in the 5th layer of element gathering tier. But only a little more than a month had passed, and this guy had already advanced to the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Ling Han was afraid that it wouldn't be long before he surpassed him. What a monster! Ling Han nodded, and said, my cultivation level is indeed a bit slow. He even sighed. Acting cool even with Mo Gao's cultivation of sword heart, he could not help but want to burst out in vulgarities. This guy was really too good at acting cool. Get lost, he said in exasperation. Ling Han laughed loudly, and took his leave. Mo Gao had just broken through, and needed time to stabilize his cultivation level. The bad news was brought by Lu Yutong. Actually, this news had long since been expected, but it had just come a bit late. The clothing stores that Ling Han had opened had all been robbed and destroyed last night. Now, the doors of the stores had been smashed, and the clothes had either been robbed or torn to pieces. Not a single store was still open. Obviously, this was Qin Yunxiang, or rather, Sun Ziyan, beginning their counterattack. Yesterday's peaceful mediation had failed, and they began their operation that night. They had probably mobilized the power of the earth and water faction. Those ruffians were naturally very skilled at doing this kind of thing. What do we do now? Lu Yutong asked Ling Han. Since the opponent doesn't play by the rules, then we can only use force. Ling Han smiled slightly. Lu Yutong was shocked, and said, you have to kill your way to the Qin clan. Sun Ziyan will definitely guess that the Qin clan will definitely be heavily guarded today, and there might even be imperial guards present. If you start a fight with the Imperial Guards, then no one can save you. The Imperial Guards represented the Tian clan, and starting a fight with the Imperial Guards was no different from rebelling. Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, since that grandson wants to play, then I'll play with him. Anyways, I have nothing to do now, so let's go to the Earth and Water faction and take care of this lackey first. Lu Yutong felt even more dizzy, and said, the sect leader of the Earth and Water faction, Yang Tian Du, is in the spiritual ocean tier. And, so we have to make a trip to the Heaven Military Hall first, Ling Han said, smiling. Chapter 191. At first, the third Imperial Prince had thought that his earnest and well-meaning advice would be able to convince Ling Han, but he had never thought that Ling Han would not listen to him at all. He could not help but be furious. If it had been anyone else, he would definitely have reprimanded him harshly, and it was even possible that he would have given him a slap. However, when he thought of the two big bosses of alchemy standing behind Ling Han, he could only suppress the fury in his heart and said, Ling Han, what right do you have to fight with Feng Yan? Putting aside the question of whether you can defeat him or not, the Lu clan only needs to send out any one of their elites in the spiritual ocean tier, and they would be able to make it so that you would not even be able to enter the door. Ling Han smiled, and said, I had not thought that your Imperial Highness would be so concerned about me. The third Imperial Prince could naturally tell that this was a sarcastic remark. Instantly, his expression darkened, and he said, Ling Han, don't let your lust get to your head. Don't forget that we are here to accomplish great things. Ling Han shook his head internally. He thought that the third Imperial Prince definitely did not know that he had become a black-grade high-level alchemist. Otherwise, the third Imperial Prince's confidence in him would naturally increase greatly, and he would not dare to speak to him with such an attitude. In truth, he had not deliberately tried to hide it. Thus, it was actually very easy to verify his identity as a black-grade high-level alchemist. At least, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion would discover it very quickly. However, how could the information about the third Imperial Prince be so outdated? That was because someone had done something to prevent the third Imperial Prince from discovering this fact. In the Imperial City, the only one who had the ability to do this was the Reign Emperor. Everyone said that the current Reign Emperor was a man of great talent and bold vision, and could possibly be the most far-sighted monarch since the founding of Reign Country. Then, how could the Reign Emperor not know that his sons were all making small moves and forming cliques? Even if he knew, he did not interfere or stop them. Obviously, the Reign Emperor wanted to see which of his sons was the most capable, and only then would he pass down the throne. This could also be considered as a test for the Imperial Princes. The pitiful eldest Imperial Prince and third Imperial Prince were still completely unaware of this. They thought that they had done everything very discreetly, but they had never imagined that everything had been under the Reign Emperor's nose. Ling Han sighed. It was most likely that the third Imperial Prince had failed. If he had made up his mind to support the third Imperial Prince, with the power he had in his hands, he would have been able to push the third Imperial Prince up no matter how weak he was. But who asked the third Imperial Prince to cut off this path himself? Your Imperial Highness, Yutong is my friend, and I will definitely not give up on my friends, Ling Han said. The third Imperial Prince was practically about to explode in anger. He was trying his best to persuade Ling Han, but why was Ling Han not listening? He said angrily, don't pretend to be so noble and virtuous. If you want beautiful women, I can give them to you. 1,000, 10,000, even Zi Yan is fine. In his heart, even Zi Yan was only a tool that could be used. As long as she could help him ascend to the throne, he could discard her at any time. Ling Han shook his head, and said, those who walk different paths cannot make plans together. Please leave, Your Imperial Highness. The third Imperial Prince's expression darkened, and he said, Ling Han, have you forgotten that the Eye of Truth coveted the secret treasure of the nation? The crime is not light. Is Your Imperial Highness threatening me? Ling Han asked with a smile. You'd better behave yourself. The third imperial prince humphed, and left in a huff. His temper was quite bad. Ling Han could not help but smile. If this guy knew that he was actually already a black-grade high-level alchemist, what kind of expression would he have on his face? Would he be so regretful that he would want to bang his head against a wall? Not long after, another person arrived. The eldest imperial prince. Like the third imperial prince, he was also advising Ling Han not to attend the wedding tomorrow. His attitude was much more forceful than the third imperial prince's, but in the end, it was still the same. He asked for a snub, and even slammed his hand on the table before leaving in anger. Ling Han sighed. This was obviously his private matter, so why was it that he was not only giving orders, but also looking as if he had been wronged? What kind of logic was this? Is young Master Ling here? It was at this moment that there was another knock on the door. There were really a lot of people here today. If it were not for the fact that he had already put Hunyou into the Black Tower to rest, the little girl would have probably been woken up quite a few times by the noise, and now she was about to jump out in anger and bite someone. Ling Han walked over to open the door, and saw a tall and slender young man standing in the doorway. His features were handsome, and he was dressed very casually. However, there was an innate aura about him that made him seem imposing even when he was not angry. I am Qi Changyu. Please forgive me for disturbing you so late at night, young Master Ling. This young man was about 20 years old, and had a cultivation level of the 9th layer of element gathering tier. Among the younger generation of the imperial city, he was not the least bit outstanding. Another one with the surname Qi. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, so it's the 7th imperial prince. Fine, he really had quite a bit of face. Now, the 3 imperial princes who were most qualified to compete for the throne had all come to visit him. But did he not know that the 7th imperial prince was also trying to persuade him not to attend the wedding tomorrow? The 7th imperial prince also smiled, and said, young Master Ling will definitely attend the wedding tomorrow, right? What the 7th imperial prince means is that it would be best if I don't go. Ling Han countered with a question. No. The 7th imperial prince shook his head, anger rising on his face as he said, this is the world of rain country, yet Feng Yan actually used the Winter Moon sect as a threat to forcefully marry a woman of our country. If I were the emperor, I would definitely send Feng Yan flying with a single punch. I don't think the Winter Moon sect would go against Rain Country for the sake of a mere disciple. Otherwise, the Winter Moon sect would really become the laughingstock of the North region. As someone who had lived 2 lives, Ling Han's judgment was naturally very sharp. He could tell that though the 7th imperial prince's words were a little pretentious, they were also his true character. However, as an imperial prince, his actions and words would all be a little exaggerated. In that case, the 7th imperial prince is here to support me? The 7th imperial prince nodded, and said, young Master Ling, feel free to do whatever you want tomorrow. I am willing to be young Master Ling's strong support. Ling Han could not help but smile, and said, why does the 7th imperial prince have such confidence in me? The Lu clan has a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier standing guard, and with my little bit of power, I don't think I can even enter the main gate of the Lu clan, right? These words were what the eldest and 3rd imperial princes had been trying to persuade him all this time, but now he was using them to test the 7th imperial prince. He did not believe that anyone who had the ability to fight for the throne was a hothead. Moreover, they had not even met once before, so why was the 7th imperial prince here to support him? The 7th imperial prince laughed loudly, and said, there is no need to resort to insinuations in front of an honest person. To tell you the truth, I have made some inquiries everywhere, and young Master Ling has just obtained 3 silver badges. In Rain Country, even Lord Imperial Father would not dare to do anything to young Master Ling. At most, he would tie young Master Ling up and drive him out of the country's borders. As expected, this guy knew that he had become a black-grade high-level alchemist, and that was why he was supporting him so wholeheartedly. Ling Han thought for a moment, and said, what kind of support can the 7th Imperial Prince give me? The seventh imperial prince could not help but feel delighted. He knew that Ling Han had already begun to accept him. Otherwise, he would not have asked such a question. He hurriedly said, "Although I do not have much power, I am willing to wave the flag and cheer for young Master Ling. I also have the power of 2 spiritual ocean tier martial artists that I can use." Ling Han was surprised. Spiritual pedestal tier martial artists were the strongest force in Rain Country. Even the current Rain Emperor could only invite them, and could not forcibly subjugate them. Thus, it was not a simple matter for the 7th Imperial Prince to be able to use the battle prowess of spiritual ocean tier martial artists. One had to know that Ling Han had only managed to rope in a spiritual ocean tier bodyguard, and this bodyguard had not even passed the test. "Then I shall accept your invitation." "Thank you, 7th Imperial Prince," he said with a smile. Chapter 192. Ling Han broke it off a few times, and the golden light became more and more intense, finally turning into a ball of brilliance that made it hard for people to open their eyes. However, the golden light quickly dimmed, and a golden plant appeared in Ling Han's hand. It was shaped like a chrysanthemum, and its flower and stem were both crystal clear, giving it an indescribable sense of beauty. Ah! Oh! Everyone cried out in surprise. A piece of stone actually contained such a wondrous item. No matter how they thought about it, it was an inconceivable thing. "Return this flower to me," the stall owner immediately roared with bloodshot eyes. Even if he didn't know what it was, he could guess that a flower contained in a stone was definitely extraordinary, and not something that could be bought with 2 or 2,000 silver coins. Now he understood. Ling Han had only pretended to be afraid, but in reality, he had long since set his eyes on this stone. "This detestable brat," Ling Han acted as if he didn't hear, and said to Hu Niu, "Niu, do you know what this is?" Hu Niu sniffed it, and immediately revealed an uninterested expression. She said, "It doesn't taste good." Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "This is called a golden flower in the stone, nurtured by the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Only this kind of 9-poison stone can nurture it, and its use is to detoxify. Just a small petal can detoxify all poisons in the world. And this stem is even more incredible, being able to detoxify all poisons. Brother, this golden flower in the stone should be very valuable, right?" someone asked from the side. "Of course." Ling Han nodded. Martial artists inevitably have to risk their lives in environments filled with poison, and just one petal of the golden flower in the stone in one's mouth can detoxify all poisons. "How valuable do you think it is?" "One petal is worth 10,000 silver coins," someone asked in a trembling voice. 10,000. Ling Han shook his head with a smile, and said, "To risk one's life in such a dangerous place, the rewards would naturally be shocking. It wouldn't be strange to spend a few million silver coins, or even tens of millions in preparation. Thus, one petal would be worth at least 100,000 silver coins." There was a collective gasp all around. 100,000 silver coins, this was too scary, because this golden flower in the stone had so many petals, at least a few hundred, so it would be worth tens of millions. Moreover, the main stem was said to be able to cure all poisons, so it was naturally even more valuable. "Ha ha ha ha, kid, give me back my golden flower of the stone." The stall owner had been listening to Ling Han's explanation, and after learning the value of the golden flower, he was naturally pleasantly surprised. He was laughing inside at Ling Han for being an idiot to reveal the treasure in front of everyone. At the same time, he was overjoyed. This time, he was going to be rich. "Are you crazy?" Ling Han smiled faintly. "This is mine. What does it have to do with you? Here's your money, I'll return it to you." The stall owner tossed out 2 silver notes. "Now, give me back my golden flower of the stone. Since the transaction is complete, this item is naturally mine." "I don't want to sell it to you," Ling Han said with a straight face. "Ha, who wouldn't dare to sell something that I Wan Shizhong, have bought. The stall owner sneered and reached out to grab Ling Han's neck. Hu Niu moved, slapping Wan Shizhong's ear with a tiger palm. With a pang, Wan Shizhong was instantly sent flying, crashing heavily into a wall. He slowly slid down, already unconscious from the slap. Everyone was shocked. How could a little girl of no more than 5 or 6 years old possess such great power? Ling Han took a piece of cloth and wrapped the golden flower of the stone. He didn't want to reveal the secret of the spatial ring in front of everyone's eyes. He glanced at the other 4 ruffians and said with a smile, "You guys also want to steal from me?" The 4 of them hurriedly shook their heads, cold sweat pouring down their foreheads. Wan Shizhong was the strongest among the 5 of them, in the 8th layer of body refining tier, yet he was actually slapped unconscious by a little girl. It could be imagined that this youngster was even more extraordinary. Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, he was definitely pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Previously, this guy had purposely shown fear, but he was only toying with them. Now, they personally sold a precious treasure for 2,000 silver coins. In the future, whenever they thought of it, they would feel bitter and resentful, even thinking of committing suicide. This was the greatest punishment for them. No wonder this brat took out the golden flower of the stone in front of everyone. It was to provoke them. Damn it! Ling Han held Hu Niu's hand and swaggered off. Lu Yutong smiled. She knew that Ling Han must have discovered something. The 2 adults and 1 child quickly left, leaving behind the envious and admiring gazes of the crowd. Big brother Shizhong. The 4 ruffians hurriedly went to help Wan Shizhong up, and after a round of pinching and pouring cold water on his philtrum, Wan Shizhong finally woke up. Ah! Wan Shizhong let out a loud roar. My treasure! He suddenly jumped up, and when he discovered that everyone nearby was looking at him with a gloating expression, he couldn't help but blush, feeling both embarrassed and angry. Big brother Shizhong, what do we do now? The 4 ruffians asked. Wan Shizhong thought for a moment, then said, You 2 follow that brat and see where he went. You 2 come back with me and ask Hall Master AI to come forward and snatch the treasure back. But big brother Shizhong, if we ask Hall Master AI to come forward, we'll definitely have to give the biggest share to him, a ruffian said carefully. Pa! Wan Shizhong gave him a slap, and scolded, You idiot, if we don't ask Hall Master AI to deal with that brat, we won't even get a fart. If Hall Master AI snatches the treasure back, we can at least get some soup. Right, big brother Shizhong is still the smart one. The 4 ruffians all nodded. Hurry up and leave. Wan Shizhong glared at them. The things here. A ruffian pointed at the things on the stall. They're not worth much in the first place. Moreover, who dares to steal my things? The 5 immediately split up and left. 2 of them stared behind Ling Han, while the other 3 went to get reinforcements. This involved treasures worth tens of millions, so how could they be willing to let go? Young Master Han, there are people following us, Lu Yutong suddenly said. Let them follow us. When there are more people later, we'll deal with them together, Ling Han said with a smile. Niu wants to fight 10 alone. Hu Niu said excitedly. The little girl grew up with a ferocious tiger, so she was originally very wild and had an extreme preference for violence. Okay. Ling Han laughed loudly. The little girl had an extremely strange spirit base in her body, and in the future, not to mention fighting 10 alone, even the whole world could tremble because of her. Lu Yutong couldn't help but roll her eyes. Ling Han actually educated Hu Niu like this, wasn't he encouraging the little girl to act recklessly? As they walked, they soon arrived at the Heaven Military Hall. This place was really bustling. A large hall was dazzling in gold and jade, and there was a square plaza surrounding it. There were many people standing in this plaza, and some were even holding up signs to recruit people to form a team to complete a mission. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, We'll also put up a sign to recruit people. Ling Han did not care, but Lu Yutong, on the other hand, could not bear to spend such an unwarranted amount of money, so she glared angrily at the man who had just spoken. Ling Han did not care, but Lu Yutong could not bear to spend such an unwarranted amount of money. Ling Han's brush moved like dragons and snakes, and he began to write on the sign, then tied it to a rock and fixed it. Instantly, he became the center of everyone's attention. Chapter 193. This was because the words written on Ling Han's signboard were truly shocking. Recruiting people to fight at the Earth and Water faction. The rewards are as follows: Gushing Spring Tier, 10,000 silver coins a day. Spiritual Ocean Tier, 100,000 silver coins a day. Poly Tier, Do Not Disturb. Go fight with the Earth and Water sect? What kind of place was the Earth and Water faction that had a powerful warrior of Spiritual Ocean Tier overseeing it? It was on par with mid-level clans. Going there to fight would mean that one would have to fight against a powerful warrior of Spiritual Ocean Tier. There were only so many Spiritual Pedestal Tier warriors in the whole of Rain Country, and those below the Spiritual Pedestal Tier were naturally Spiritual Ocean Tier. Who would dare to mess around? But on the other hand, the remuneration that Ling Han offered was also quite shocking. A martial artist in Gushing Spring Tier would be able to earn 10,000 a day, and a martial artist in Spiritual Ocean Tier would be able to earn 100,000 a day. An income of 100,000 a day meant 3 million a month. What kind of concept was that? Even a large family like the 8 great clans wouldn't have a monthly net income of more than 10 million. Now, one person could earn 3 million, which was equivalent to 1/3 of the income of a wealthy family. How shocking was this? Moreover, the 8 great clans only had Spiritual Pedestal Tier warriors to keep watch, and now 3 Spiritual Ocean Tier warriors would be able to match. Instantly, this attracted a lot of attention. However, all of them were just spectators, and no one came up to understand the situation. After all, Ling Han was too young. Who would believe that he would be able to fork out such a large sum of money? Additionally, the Earth and Water faction was not to be trifled with. Therefore, everyone decided to wait and see. You can't set up a stall here. Without the approval and guarantee of the Sky Military Hall, no one will believe that you have such financial resources, Lu Yutong reminded him. Alright, let's go inside. Ling Han strode toward the Sky Martial Palace. He came to a window and said, I want to issue a mission. Young master, what mission would you like to issue? The girl in charge of recording the mission asked sweetly. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, I'm going to the Earth and Water sect to fight. The young girl's pretty face instantly twitched. She naturally knew what kind of place the Earth and Water faction was. She hurriedly shook her head, and said, Young master, don't joke around. The Earth and Water faction is a force of the Imperial City. Even if the young master had the strength to do so, the Imperial Guards would prohibit you from causing trouble. The Sky Martial Hall will not accept such a request. Is that so? Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, Then I'll go to the Earth and Water faction for a stroll, and ask someone to protect me. Liolio, the corner of the young girl's mouth twitched again. Whose place would allow people to stroll around? Is there any problem with this kind of commission? Ling Han said with a smile. Of course, there was no problem in taking a stroll, but everyone knew that this stroll would definitely lead to a fight. The girl smiled bitterly and said, There is indeed no problem, but young master, if there's no problem, then hang it up for me. You don't have to worry about anything else. Ling Han smiled, handed over a silver note, and said, The remuneration is as follows. He explained the remuneration, and then added, 10 in the Spiritual Ocean Tier is enough, and as for Gushing Spring Tier, 100 will do. The young girl's expression immediately changed. This was a huge expense, and her first reaction was that Ling Han was joking. However, the banknotes he handed over were not fake at all. There was a total of 6 million taels of silver, which was enough to hire such a team for 3 days. This young master was a super rich man. She hurriedly registered Ling Han's commission. In any case, as long as it did not violate the rules of the Sky Marshal Hall, and the remuneration was paid, then no matter what kind of strange commission it was, it would be announced to all members. Because this commission was a huge sum, it instantly became a hot topic. What? Hiring bodyguards to go to the Earth and Water faction for a stroll? Is this a joke? Don't care if it's a joke or not. Since it's a commission, it means that there's definitely no problem with the remuneration. Hiss, 10,000 a day. If you were in the spiritual ocean tier, it'd be 100,000 a day. The whole plaza became lively. Some people even thought of the signboard that Ling Han had erected earlier, and all turned to look for him. Ling Han was already standing there, and those people immediately started asking him questions. Young master, I'm in the 9th layer of Pali, and have 1 foot into the gushing spring tier. How about it? I only need 5,000 taels. I'm in the 8th layer of Pali, and I only need 4,000 taels. Those who asked questions were basically in the Pali tier, and were just there to join in the fun, while the gushing spring tier elites were just observing. After all, the Earth and Water faction was not just for show. Ling Han only pointed at the signboard that he had erected. Why would he want someone in the Pali tier? He himself was in the 9th layer of Pali, and this kind of underling was not cool enough. His eyes swept over, and a smile suddenly appeared on his face. He started walking forward, and saw a middle-aged man sitting on a stone lion, holding a wine gourd in his hand, continuously pouring wine into his mouth. This brat's eyesight is not bad, actually having his eyes on Lord Guang Yuan. What, Lord Guang Yuan, who is known to shatter a mountain with 7 punches? Isn't it him, one of the top 10 elites of our Sky Marshal Hall? Hiss, he has the cultivation of the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and was also a genius in martial art back then. I don't know what happened, but he lingered in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier for so long. Are you an idiot? Every step in the spiritual ocean tier is a step to the heavens, and it's not strange for some people to be stuck for a lifetime. When it came to the middle-aged man, everyone exclaimed in surprise. Ling Han obviously did not know that this man's name was Guang Yuan. He only walked over after seeing the man's cultivation level. However, as he focused his attention, he discovered more things, and a smile involuntarily appeared at the corner of his lips. Alcohol will only make one more worried, he said to Guang Yuan. A little brat, what does he know about worry? Guang Yuan said indifferently, not even turning his head. You've cultivated the Great Sun Heaven Heart scripture, right? Ling Han lowered his voice to a thin line so that only Guang Yuan could hear him. Guang Yuan's expression instantly changed, and he could not help but stop drinking wine. He walked towards Ling Han, and similarly lowered his voice to a thin line as he said, How did you know? Not only do I know that you've cultivated the Great Sun Heaven Heart scripture, I also know that you've cultivated the wrong cultivation technique. Right now, is your 3rd spine faintly aching? Ling Han said indifferently. This time, Guang Yuan could no longer sit still. He suddenly leaped down from the stone lion, stood in front of Ling Han, and said, Who on earth are you? He had also only discovered in the recent year that there was a problem with his cultivation, and the symptoms were just as Ling Han had said, his 3rd spine faintly ached. Come, accept my request, and I will bestow upon you a good fortune. Not only can it solve your problem, it can even help you advance a step further, Ling Han said with a faint smile, like a demon bewitching the human heart. Only now did Guang Yuan arrive at the plaque that Ling Han had set up. He could not help but reveal a strange expression, and said, You're quite daring. It's just a so-so, that's why I need to find a few bodyguards. Ling Han said with a smile. Guang Yuan revealed a pondering expression. The other party could tell that he had cultivated the Heavenly Origin Heart scripture and that he had encountered a problem with his cultivation, so there was a high chance that he could help him solve his problem. He decided to take a gamble. Alright, I'll accept this request. Chapter 194. Guang Yuan did not suppress his voice when he said this, so everyone heard it clearly. What? 7 fists shatter the mountain. Master Guang Yuan accepted the mission. That's Master Guang Yuan. With Master Guang Yuan supporting us, what do we have to fear? I'll sign up too. Seeing that Guang Yuan had accepted the mission, many gushing spring tier elites all called out. Please go to the main hall to accept the mission, Ling Han said with a smile, and then come back here to gather. Today is one day. Everyone was in disbelief. Of course, Ling Han said casually. This guy definitely had money to burn. It was almost noon now, which meant that half a day's worth of money had already been burned. However, this kind of rich man was the most likable, wasn't it? With the addition of a spiritual ocean tier elite, everyone's courage increased greatly. Even if the sky collapsed, there would be someone taller to hold it up. The power of setting an example was endless. Very soon, another spiritual ocean tier elite accepted the mission. In this way, so what if he forced his way into the earth and water faction? If Yang Tian did not want both sides to suffer great losses, he could only swallow his anger. The more spiritual ocean tier elites accepted the mission, the more attractive it was. Anyway, everyone only needed to protect Ling Han's safety. They did not need to violate the law, so at least they could retreat unscathed. Another hour later, the 100 gushing spring tier elites were all gathered. In fact, there were more gushing spring tier elites who wanted to join, but Ling Han did not need them. However, there were only 7 spiritual ocean tier elites. After all, spiritual ocean tier elites were absolute elites. It was not easy for a lone cultivator to reach this level. To be able to recruit 7 in a short hour was in fact a miracle. Firstly, the conditions that Ling Han offered were attractive enough, and secondly, Guang Yuan joined first, which motivated everyone. 7 spiritual ocean tier elites should be enough. Ling Han thought for a moment. Although it was not as eye-catching as 10, it was not a small number. Young Master Han, when are we leaving? Everyone asked Ling Han. Though all of them had a higher cultivation level than Ling Han, who asked him to be their benefactor. Lone cultivators were not as proud as disciples of great clans. Otherwise, they would definitely not address Ling Han as young Master Han unless they knew of his background. When the people who went to accept the mission are back, we'll set off, Ling Han said. All right. Everyone nodded. A huge sum of money was waving at them. That's him. Just at that moment, a person pointed at Ling Han furiously. It was Ruan Shizhong, the person who had forcefully bought and sold the goods. There were a few other people beside him. 4 of them were his lackeys, and there was a middle-aged man with a much steadier aura. He was an elite warrior of gushing spring tier. This middle-aged man's name was Ai Song, and he was a hall master of the earth and water faction. When he heard Ruan Shizhong mention the matter of the golden flower of the stone, he was instantly unable to restrain his greed, and followed them over. Brat, my faction's disciple, Ruan Shizhong, has mistakenly sold the sect's precious treasure. Return the precious treasure. Ai Lian shouted at Ling Han, his expression filled with arrogance. The people who had accepted Ling Han's mission immediately looked fierce. Their mission was to ensure Ling Han's safety, and they had never thought that before they had even left the Heaven Military Hall, this enemy of theirs would come looking for them. This was really interesting. These lone cultivators were all people who had lived their lives on the edge of a knife. It could be said that they had relied on their own strength to improve their cultivation all this way. Of course, some of them might be very dishonorable, and would be accompanied by forceful robbery and murder. They were more complete than the disciples of great clans, and were also more iron-willed and aggressive. It was a pity that Ai Song was still in a daze and did not realize it. He felt good about himself, and thought that he had devoured this young man, Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, I bought and sold it openly, so of course the item is mine. Now, I have no interest in selling the item, so get lost. Get lost. AI Lian's originally arrogant expression looked as if it had been suddenly punched by someone, and his expression became extremely ugly. He said darkly, "Brat, do you know who I am? An idiot for me to laugh at." Ling Han laughed. What? AI Lian was stunned, and then he revealed a furious expression. Ling Han continued, "I've discovered that all idiots have a common trait, and that is that they like to say, 'You know who I am.' Do you know who I am? How the fuck would I know which idiot you are? You're courting death." AI Lian finally could not bear it any longer, and he leaped towards Ling Han, punching out. He wanted to seriously injure this brat who had spoken so rudely. "Get lost, idiot." A figure leaped out and similarly punched out towards AI Lian. Peng, the two fists collided, instantly forming a visible ripple that spread out in all directions. AI Lian's body trembled, teng teng teng, and he retreated 13 steps. The other person also retreated, but he only retreated 7 steps. AI Lian could not help but look angry, and said, "Brat, no wonder you dare to be so stubborn with me. So you have someone supporting you. Who are you? Do you know who I am?" When he said the last sentence, he suddenly remembered what Ling Han had said before, and could not help but look embarrassed. "How would I know who an idiot like you are?" That person shrugged. He was naturally a bodyguard that Ling Han had recruited. His name was San, and he had the cultivation of the 4th layer of the gushing spring tear. Ha ha ha. The others all laughed. AI Lian humphed, and said, "Don't think that you can suppress me with your strength. I was just careless just now." This was the truth. He obviously could not kill Ling Han, so he only used a small amount of power in that punch. "I am the Hall Master of the Loyalty Hall of the Earth and Water faction, AI Lian. Do you still want to be my enemy?" he added. Everyone could not help but give an "oh." No wonder he had enmity with Ling Han, because Ling Han was about to deal with the Earth and Water faction, but they did not know that they had not guessed correctly at all. "Get lost." San glared. Though lone cultivators were weak, they had one advantage, and that was that they did not have any worries. They did things without restraint, and fought when they wanted to. If they couldn't win, they could run. At worst, they could hide somewhere for 3 to 5 years. "Good, you dare to be my Earth and Water faction's enemy, how dare you," AI Lian said angrily. Ling Han walked towards Zhuang, and said with a smile, "Coincidentally, I still don't know where the Earth and Water faction's base is. Come, lead the way." Impudence. AI Lian once again attacked Ling Han, but San still shot out a punch, blocking him. Ling Han grabbed, and Zhuang was captured by him. He smiled slightly, and said, "I gave you a chance, but you didn't take it, and came to provoke me again. You have to know, in life, there is not always a second chance." Pa! He bent his hands, and Zhuang's right arm was instantly twisted off, dangling at a terrifying angle, causing those who saw it to feel a chill in their hearts. "Ah!" Zhuang immediately screamed. This time, not just AI Lian, even the people of Guangyuan were all very shocked, because publicly wounding someone in the imperial city was not a small matter. This brat was really too ruthless, wasn't he? Chapter 195. Thankfully, Feng Yan's saber was only of mortal grade. Otherwise, as long as it reached the level of a level 1 spirit tool, there would be no need to inscribe any martial intent on it. Merely the sharpness of the saber would be enough to slice Ling Han's sword in half. "Great Sun Mad Saber, shatter!" Feng Yan shouted loudly, and charged with his saber. Saber light flashed, creating waves after waves, its might extremely terrifying. "What a strong saber intent!" Xie Cheng exclaimed in shock. At this time, the spiritual infant tier decree had already been put away, and everyone naturally climbed up from the ground to watch the battle between these two young prodigies. However, there were also some people who swept their gazes over Hunyou and Yan Tianzhao, because these two people were actually able to resist the spiritual infant tear pressure that was circulating from the decree, which was really something that they had not expected. Xie Chang was known as the Overlord Saber, and in terms of his attainments in saber arts, he could be considered one of the best in Rain Country. Even he had to exclaim in shock, so it could be seen that Feng Yan's saber arts were indeed extraordinary. A lot of people nodded in agreement. Whether they liked Feng Yan as a person or not was one thing, but if they were to look at it as a matter of fact, Feng Yan's attainments in saber arts were indeed extraordinary. Otherwise, how could the third imperial prince, Zhao Huan, and Can Yi have been so easily defeated by him? Ling Han was also slightly surprised. The might of this saber had reached the level of a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. The Feng clan would not be able to produce a black-grade martial arts technique at all. In the whole of Rain Country, probably only the imperial family possessed a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. Feng Yan naturally could not have obtained such a secret technique from the imperial family. Thus, he must have obtained it when he went to the Winter Moon sect. Not bad, not bad. No wonder he was able to gain the favor of a powerful warrior of spiritual infant tier. Feng Yan should have only cultivated this saber art for slightly more than a month, yet he had already practiced this saber art to a very familiar level, and had at least grasped 20 to 30% of its essence. It could be seen that his talent in martial arts was indeed extraordinary. But it was only extraordinary. Ling Han gave a long shout, and brandished his sword. The Four Seasons sword technique was activated, and he charged towards Feng Yan. This sword technique was something he had taught to Lu Yutong, and it was also a martial arts technique that he had used in his last life. There was absolutely no need for him to familiarize himself with it. With just a thought, it would naturally and smoothly circulate. A fine drizzle fell, as if it was a continuous spring rain. This fine drizzle was formed from Ling Han's origin power. As long as it stuck to his body, the origin power would enter his body and cause terrifying damage. Good sword technique. When it came to Ling Han's sword technique, there were also a great many people who exclaimed in admiration. In the world of martial arts, the sword and the saber were the two most commonly used weapons. Feng Yan's saber technique drew the admiration of saber users, while Ling Han's sword technique obtained the praise of the swordsman. The strength of this young man's sword intent is not inferior to Feng Yan's. That's right. Honestly speaking, if I suppressed my cultivation level to gushing spring tier, I might not be able to unleash such a strong sword technique. Strange, why do I have a feeling that this sword technique is not fully displayed, and is still holding back? You think so too? Feng Yan gave a long shout, and had already brandished his saber. Ding! A crisp sound rang out, and a ripple of sound waves spread out in all directions. All the martial artists below gushing spring tier all bled from their ears, nose, and eyes, looking extremely wretched. Even if they were in gushing spring tier, there were still a considerable number of martial artists who could not help but cover their ears. Ling Han and Feng Yan were both sent retreating. In this exchange, they were evenly matched, and it was difficult to determine who was stronger. I've underestimated you a bit. Feng Yan humphed coldly. With a spin of his saber, a piercingly cold saber light rippled out, like a raging waterfall. Saber roll 30,000 feet, slay all enemies in the world. Xie Chang's hand trembled, and he could not help but touch the hilt of his saber, a fighting spirit flashing in his eyes. This kind of saber intent made even him itch, and he could not help but want to battle. That strike just now was actually not his full power. Heavens, he's already so strong, and he can actually still improve further. This is too terrifying. This time, Ling Han can only retreat, right? Amidst the exclamations of shock from the crowd, Ling Han's sword swept out, and the spring rain appeared again. However, it was only for an instant, and the artistic conception of the sword technique changed. From the continuous spring rain, it became the sudden clap of thunder in summer. Hong long long, the sound of thunder did not stop, and it was deafening. What? Everyone was stunned. Consecutive sword strikes. How is this possible? The first strike has not even been completely unleashed, and he can already unleash a new strike. Moreover, this sword intent changes so naturally, as if it makes one feel as if spring has come to summer, and it is in accordance with the Tao of heaven. No wonder that strike just now gave me the feeling that it had not been fully unleashed. So it turns out that the sword intent is continuous, and it has not been fully unleashed at all. This is too terrifying. How does this guy cultivate? But that was it. Ling Han's sword intent changed again, and the autumn wind rose. It was slightly bleak, and filled with killing intent. Then, with another change, it became a frigid winter. Endless white snow fluttered in the air, causing everyone to involuntarily cross their arms, feeling a chill. One strike, 4 types of sword intent. My God, freak. 2 freak. How is this possible? Everyone was dumbfounded. This had completely surpassed the scope of their understanding. Such a sword technique should not have appeared in the mortal world at all. Ling Han revealed a faint smile. When the 4 seasons sword technique was combined into one, its might was already close to that of an earth-grade martial arts technique. If it were not for the fact that he possessed a sliver of divine sense of the heaven tier, he would not have been able to transform the sword technique so smoothly. And once there was a delay, then there would be a gap in the 4 seasons, and its might would not even be as good as when he had used the sword technique of 1 season. Spring rain, summer thunder, autumn wind, and winter snow. Ling Han controlled the 4 types of sword intent, and charged mightily towards Feng Yan. Feng Yan's expression could not help but change drastically. If Ling Han had only used the sword technique of 1 season, he would have been completely unafraid. In fact, he could even use the domineering nature of his saber technique to suppress Ling Han. But when the 4 seasons sword technique was combined into one, it formed the effect of 1 + 1 was greater than 2. This was a sword formation, which was equivalent to 4 people joining forces. No matter how strong he was, could he possibly stand against 4 Ling Hans at the same time? He gave a furious roar, and his saber sank downwards. The momentum of his attack stopped, and his right foot suddenly stomped on the ground, forcing his body to retreat. Hong, sword shadows surged, yet struck empty air. The tables and chairs in the vicinity were all sliced into pieces, which danced in the air. Who, Feng Yan was panting heavily. Just now, he had forcefully stopped his attack, which was equivalent to giving himself a slap. It was extremely uncomfortable. He hurriedly swallowed an alchemical pill, and his eyes were fixed on Ling Han, revealing a strong expression of wariness. He could tell that Ling Han's single strike contained 4 sets of sword techniques, and 4 kinds of sword intent. If it was just any one of them, he would not be the slightest bit afraid. But the combined might of the 4 seasons was too great, and even he did not dare to face it head-on. Damn it! At first, he could have crushed Ling Han to death with just a raise of his hand, but at that time, he had not yet obtained the approval of the Winter Moon sect, so he had been slightly apprehensive in his actions. He had wanted to leave Ling Han's life for 3 months before taking it. He had never thought that a moment of carelessness would actually cause his younger brother to die at Ling Han's hands. Now, Ling Han even possessed the ability to stand against him. This brat had really grown too quickly, hadn't he? Kill him, he had to kill him. Feng Yan once again drew out the decree, and with a schwa, he unfurled it. A powerful pressure swept over them, and pa. Everyone once again knelt on the ground, or sat down on the ground, all of them lowering their heads. Die! Feng Yan used the decree like a whip, and lashed it out at Ling Han. There were multiple characters flashing on the front, and it was indescribably sinister. Chapter 196. Ling Han's party was majestic. The corners of Guang Yuan and the others' mouths curled up in a meaningful smile. They were lone cultivators, untamed and untamed, but none of them were idiots. From the attitude of the two imperial guards, it was obvious that Ling Han's identity was definitely not simple. Even the imperial guards seemed to be blind and sided with him, so this trip was more daunting than dangerous. The Earth and Water faction only had 3 spiritual ocean tier warriors and a few dozen gushing spring tier warriors, much weaker than their party. They swaggered through the streets, and soon arrived at the Earth and Water faction. Though the Earth and Water faction was a faction in name, in reality, it was no different from a clan. They had a large courtyard in the city, and all the leaders of the faction lived here. At this time, the main gate was already on standby. Obviously, after Ai Lian came back to report the news, the Earth and Water faction reacted. "Sir, you first stole the treasure of our faction's disciple, and now you come to our door. Do you think our Earth and Water faction has no one?" an old man said darkly, his body emitting a powerful presence. Ling Han couldn't help but smile. So the Earth and Water faction mistakenly thought that the cause of the incident was the golden flower of the stone. He shook his head, and said, "Your intelligence department is too poor. You smashed so many of my shops, and you don't even know who I am." The old man was an elder of the Earth and Water faction, at the second layer of the spiritual ocean tier. His name was Lu Yu. He stared at Ling Han for a while, but found that the latter's appearance was unfamiliar. That's right, smashing people's shops was a small business for the Earth and Water faction. It couldn't possibly alarm a big shot like him, so he didn't know that he'd made such an enemy. At this time, a middle-aged man's expression changed, and he whispered something in Lu Yu's ear. The old man nodded slightly, showing a disapproving expression. Fuck, so it was just a small matter like a few ready-made shops being smashed. In Lu Yu's opinion, how could the value of a few ready-made shops compare to the golden flower of the stone? You stole the treasure of my faction's disciple, and its value was already several hundred times that of the smashed shops. No matter what, the Earth and Water faction was the victim. This brat must be the young master of some rich family and had been spoiled since he was young. That was why he was so impulsive and came to seek revenge after a few shops were smashed. Humph, I don't know what you're talking about, but you're just pouring dirty water on my sect. Lu Yu completely denied the matter of smashing up the shop. After all, this was not something to be proud of. Though the Earth and Water sect was just a gangster sect in the eyes of the people of the Imperial City, they themselves thought very highly of themselves. Leave behind the golden flower of the stone and pay another 10 million taels of silver. Then you can get lost, he said forcefully to Ling Han. Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, "You really are overbearing. But do you have the confidence to be overbearing?" He started walking towards the door. Impudent. Someone immediately leapt out, grabbing at Ling Han's throat, wanting to capture him in one move. Scram! Another person leaped out from behind Ling Han. His sword flashed like water and swept towards that person. The expression of that person from the Earth and Water sect tensed, and he hurriedly turned to dodge. He saw a middle-aged man holding a sword standing in front of Ling Han, and the aura he exuded was not the slightest bit weaker than his. Ling Han did not even pause and continued to advance. This kind of disdainful attitude greatly enraged the people of the Earth and Water sect. They all leapt out and charged towards Ling Han. However, those people that Ling Han had hired naturally could not just take the money and do nothing. They all leapt out and protected Ling Han. This was 100 against 13. Ling Han's side had a great advantage, and there were still 7 spiritual ocean tier warriors who had not made a move. Only then did Lu Yu realize that there were still 7 people whose aura was not the slightest bit weaker than his, and his expression tensed. They were in the gushing spring tier, so it was useless no matter how many people there were. As long as he heavily injured a few of them with lightning speed, it was guaranteed that the rest would flee like rats. They were lone cultivators, after all. When they had the upper hand, they were fiercer than anyone else, but once they were at a disadvantage, it was guaranteed that they would turn into a pile of loose sand and flee faster than anyone else. However, now that 7 spiritual ocean tier warriors had appeared, it was not easy to deal with them. This brat was really rich and overbearing, actually hiring even spiritual ocean tier warriors. No wonder he dared to come here and challenge them. Lu Yu thought for a moment, then said, "Friends, no matter what conditions this brat offers you, as long as you can stand by and watch today, the Earth and Water sect will pay the reward he promised." He could be considered to be quite decisive. Guang Yuan snickered, and said, "Elder Lu, a person must be trustworthy. Moreover, we have already accepted a mission from the Heaven Military Hall. If we shirk our responsibilities now, who would dare to hire us in the future?" "You recognize me?" Lu Yu asked. "Hehe, Elder Lu Yu is known as the Soft Sun Needle. You are skilled in using hidden weapons without anyone noticing. Who wouldn't recognize you?" Guang Yuan said calmly, then waved his hand and said, "Today's main character is young Master Han. If you have anything to say, just say it to young Master Han. We are only responsible for protecting young Master Han's safety." Old fox. Lu Yu cursed in his heart. He had originally wanted to use the Earth and Water sect to pressure the other party, but the other party easily pushed the responsibility onto Ling Han, making him feel as if he had punched into cotton. It was very uncomfortable. "Brat, it's not too late to stop now." He then said to Ling Han, "As long as you compensate my sect for our losses." Just as he was chattering away, Ling Han suddenly shot out a punch and actually knocked the signboard off the door. With a pang, it fell onto the ground. This was made of bronze, and the loud sound it made when it hit the ground gave many a fright. When the members of the Earth and Water sect saw this, their eyes all turned red. That was the signboard of the Earth and Water sect. As the saying went, "Don't hit people in the face." This signboard was equivalent to the face of the Earth and Water sect. Now that it had been smashed onto the ground by Ling Han, everyone was naturally furious. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "You all must have had a good time making a ruckus in my shop last night. Today, I'll let you all have a good time as well." He raised his foot and suddenly stomped down. The power of the 9th layer of Pali exploded, and the signboard instantly split down the middle, breaking into 2 pieces. "You're seeking death." The members of the Earth and Water sect were all furious. They wanted nothing more than to tear Ling Han into pieces. Though it was not allowed to kill within the imperial capital, that did not mean that they had to endure when someone came knocking on their door. Injuring or killing in self-defense was not a crime. Ignorant brat. Lu Yu's killing intent was revealed, and he suddenly leapt towards Ling Han. He raised his hand, and shio, 9 golden needles shot out, intertwined with his unique origin power. They had the effect of piercing through origin power defenses, and were very vicious. "Elder Yu, your opponent is me." Guang Yuan roared loudly. His body trembled, and actually emitted a boundless golden light, as if he was a Buddha. He struck out with a single hand, and shouted, "The Dharma is boundless, release the soul from the dead." The golden light was dazzling, and indescribably vast. Ling Han did not even give it a second glance, and only continued to stride forward, entering into the Earth and Water sect. He smiled faintly, and said to Hun Yo, Come, let's compete and see who can smash more things. Nyo will definitely win." Hun Yo was in high spirits. Chapter 197. Ling Han and Hun Yo both wreaked havoc. With a punch and a kick, they began to destroy from the main entrance, smashing whatever they saw. They destroyed all the way towards the main hall, leaving behind a floor full of ruins. Naturally, more Earth and Water faction disciples jumped out to stop them, but Ling Han had hired as many as 100 gushing spring-tier martial artists, so this was naturally the time for them to show their prowess. They also jumped out and faced those people, protecting Ling Han's safety. When Ling Han smashed all the way to the main hall, the originally beautiful flowers and elegant corridors were already in a complete mess. Broken flowers were everywhere, and broken pillars were all over the ground, as if there was a demolition going on here. Stop! A voice filled with authority sounded, and a tall old man appeared, exuding endless coldness and might, filled with the oppressive feeling of a superior. It was the sect leader of the Earth and Water faction, Yang Tian-du, fifth layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Everyone involuntarily stopped what they were doing. A tree's shadow, a person's name, Yang Tian-du was still the sect leader, so he naturally had some influence. However, his face and influence obviously had no effect on the two of them. Quang, Quang, Quang. Ling Han and Hun Yo smashed to their heart's content. There were more things to smash in the main hall, such as tables, chairs, flower vases, screens, and so on. This was especially so for Hun Yo. She had been raised by a ferocious beast in the first place, so there was the factor of slaughter and destruction hidden in her blood. It was just that she had temporarily suppressed it when she was following Ling Han previously, and now it was slowly released. She bared her little canine teeth and revealed her ferocious appearance, just like a little tiger. I told you to stop. Yang Tian-du roared angrily. Hung, his voice turned into a ripple, shaking towards Ling Han and Hun Yo. Hun Yo's figure flashed again and again as if she could teleport, miraculously leaping over the sound waves. Meanwhile, Ling Han's left hand shook, and the blood-sucking origin gold turned into a concave mirror. After the sound waves converged, they were rebounded and turned into a straight line. With a pu sound, it actually caused the legs of a disciple of the Earth and Water faction to turn into bloody foam. Ling Han put away the origin gold, shook his head, and said, "Sect leader Yang's prowess is indeed unparalleled. The power of a single roar is actually able to turn someone's flesh and blood into rain. As expected of an elite of the spiritual ocean tier. However, why did you attack your own people? Could it be that he made you a cuckold?" Even with Yang Tian-du's shrewdness, his face couldn't help but turn green when he heard these words. He coldly said, "Brat, a loose tongue can cause trouble. Today, you're dead for sure." He suddenly made a move. His figure was as fast as lightning, and with a single leap, he arrived in front of Ling Han. Scram! Guang Yuan attacked, transforming into a golden Buddha. With a single palm strike, golden light filled the sky. Pang! The two clashed, and both of their figures shook slightly, then each took 7 steps back. However, Guang Yuan's expression changed slightly, and he took another step back before stabilizing his footing. This was because he had an unmentionable illness, or else he definitely wouldn't be at a slight disadvantage. 7 fists shattering mountain, Guang Yuan. Yang Tian-du recognized the other at a glance. Chaotic shadow sword, Yang Tian-du. Guang Yuan said indifferently. Yang Tian-du couldn't help but reveal a cautious expression. Guang Yuan was also in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and although he was at a slight disadvantage in that attack, as long as another person joined forces with him, it would be enough to fight against him. Ling Han's side had a total of 7 spiritual ocean tier cultivators, while his side only had 3. In terms of numbers, they were at a great disadvantage. Brother Guang Yuan, what do you mean by getting involved in this mess? Why don't you just stand by and watch? I owe you a favor, how about it? Yang Tian-du decided to endure for now. Guang Yuan smiled disdainfully, and said, "How is the Earth and Water faction's reputation? Doesn't Leader Yang know this favor? I dare not ask for it." Yang Tian-du instantly trembled in anger. This was blatantly taunting him. However, Guang Yuan's tone changed. "We are only hired to protect young Master Han. As long as young Master Han is safe, we naturally won't interfere. So, why don't Leader Yang give us some face and let young Master Han stroll around here? As for us, we can drink tea and chat, how about it? How about it?" The people of the Earth and Water faction all looked like they wanted to kill someone. Ling Han didn't have the slightest bit of restlessness in strolling around, smashing everything along the way, even more robbing than a bandit. If he was allowed to stroll around for half a day, would there still be a complete tile left in the Earth and Water faction's headquarters? Yang Tiandu's gaze swept over, and his eyes lit up as he said, "Everyone, you only need to protect this youngster's safety, right?" "Naturally." Guang Yuan and the others all nodded. "Then this girl and this little girl shouldn't be under your protection, right?" Yang Tiandu's lips curled up into a cold smile. He was referring to Lu Yutong and Hunyou. "Indeed not." Guang Yuan and the others all shook their heads again. "All right." Yang Tiandu waved his hand, pointing at Lu Yutong and Hunyou, and said, "Capture these two." He was calm and composed, and picked up his teacup to drink, feeling that everything was back in his control. "Yes, Lord Sect Leader." Everyone of the Earth and Water faction was greatly energized. They finally found a breakthrough point, and could finally turn over and become the master. Ling Han laughed, and said, "Allow me to introduce this beautiful young lady to you. Her surname is Lu, and her name is Yutong. She is a noble daughter of the Lu family of the 8 great clans." "Hee, I really admire Leader Yang, your boldness is astonishing, even daring to touch the young lady of the Lu family. You definitely won't be able to find a second person with such courage in the Imperial City." "Pooh." Yang Tiandu instantly spat out a mouthful of hot water. Lu Yu, who was at the side, didn't expect to be ambushed like this. Instantly, his face was covered in hot water, and his eyebrows, hair, and beard were all stuck to his face. "Stop, stop." Yang Tiandu didn't have time to comfort Lu Yu, and hurriedly shouted for his subordinates to stop. If they dared to use force against the noble daughter of the Lu family, the elites of the Lu family would soon come knocking and flip the Earth and Water faction upside down. She is indeed the young lady of the Lu family. I've seen her once before. The twin beauties of the Imperial City, who hasn't heard of them? They are indeed shockingly beautiful. Why is she hanging out with that detestable brat? The people of the Earth and Water faction were also whispering among themselves. The noble daughter of the Lu family had also joined in, making them feel uneasy. Could it be that the Lu family was dissatisfied with them, and specially sent Ling Han to knock them down a peg? Don't misunderstand. Ling Han smiled faintly, and took the initiative to explain, "This matter has nothing to do with the Lu family. The reason why I'm here today is very simple. You guys smashed up my Yutong yesterday. How many of our shops were smashed?" 47, Lu Yutong immediately replied. "You guys smashed up 47 of my shops. Today, I'm here to demand justice." Ling Han broke into a smile. "How much silver do you intend to compensate me?" "Motherfucker, you came to the Earth and Water faction to smash things up, and you actually want us to give you an explanation?" The people of the Earth and Water faction were all enraged. They usually bullied and dominated the market, committing all sorts of evil deeds, and could be considered shameless people. But now, they paled in comparison, and were far from being as shameless as Ling Han. "You came to our faction to behave atrociously, and you still want our faction to compensate you?" Yang Tiandu was so angry that he laughed, his tone sinister. "No compensation." Ling Han broke into a smile. "Then I'll continue smashing things up." Chapter 198. Quang, 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 Ling Han attacked, ruthlessly destroying to his heart's content. Hunyou had already returned to Ling Han's side to avoid a sneak attack from the Earth and Water faction. If she was taken as a hostage, Ling Han would have a headache. "Stop!" The people of the Earth and Water faction all tried to stop them, but once they moved, Guang Yuan and the others also moved, triggering the whole army, and another chaotic battle ensued. "Brothers, please don't make things difficult for us," Guang Yuan and the others all said. Someone from the Earth and Water faction was already coughing up blood. It was this brat who came here to behave atrociously, so why did he advise them not to make things difficult for him? Was there any logic in this world? Ling Han smashed everything he saw, and Hunyo turned into a violent maniac, destroying the furniture and decorations. Although there were only two of them, the destructive power of Poly-Tear couldn't be underestimated. And this vase is not bad. Ling Han picked up a vase and smashed it into pieces. He shrugged, and said, "Io, my hand slipped." Kwang, another exquisite vase was smashed. My hand slipped again. Kwang, why does my hand keep slipping today? Sect leader Yang, whenever you decide to compensate me, come and talk to me. Ling Han said with a smile as he smashed the painting hanging on the wall of the hall into pieces, making Hunyo clap her hands in delight. Because the painting was of a fierce tiger with white forehead and eyes, it obviously violated the little girl's taboo. Yang Tiandu's face darkened. He clenched his teeth and was silent for a moment, then said, "Report to the Imperial Guards that someone trespassed into our residence and committed evil." Sect leader. The people of the Earth and Water faction all exclaimed. If they reported this to the Imperial Guards, then where would their face be? A grand large faction was actually forced by a youngster to the point of asking the Imperial Guards to deal with it. If this news spread out, how would they still have face? Do you guys think you'll have face now? Yang Tiandu snorted. Everyone immediately fell silent. Yes, Ling Han was smashing to his heart's content, but they could only watch helplessly. Would they have face now? I'll go. Lu Yu gritted his teeth and accepted the mission. He really couldn't bear to watch as Ling Han wreaked havoc, so he simply left. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. Elder Lu has worked hard. Yang Tiandu said. Lu Yu left. At this point, the members of the Earth and Water faction might as well leave, and wait for the Imperial Guards to come and deal with Ling Han. One had to know that the Empire had its laws. Publicly destroying someone's residence was a serious crime. Only half an hour later, Lu Yu led a group of several dozen Imperial Guards over. Although there weren't many of them, and the person in the lead was only in gushing spring tear, their status was there for all to see. Would Guang Yuan and the others dare to make another move? Making an enemy out of the Empire was tantamount to treason. The members of the Earth and Water faction had never longed to see the Imperial Guards as much as they did now. All of them were so excited that their eyes were red, and they all went up to greet them. Their enthusiasm gave the Imperial Guards a fright. These guys were smiling too terrifyingly. They were all men, so why were they holding my hand? They even held it and refused to let go. Could it be that they were interested in their own ass? Captain Zhua. Yang Tiandu greeted the captain of the Imperial Guards, and said, "There's a madman wreaking havoc here, ignoring the laws of the Empire. Please apprehend him and punish him according to the law." Captain Zhuo revealed a strange expression, and said, "With Master Yang's ability, you still can't apprehend this madman?" The members of the Earth and Water faction all blushed, but Yang Tiandu said calmly, "We are good subjects who abide by the law, so how could we easily use force? Naturally, we will report to Captain Zhua at the first instant, and have the Imperial Guards apprehend him. This is only natural and in accordance with the laws of the Empire." TSK, 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 that sounded so nice. Captain Zhua's face twitched slightly. He naturally knew what kind of people the Earth and Water faction was. When he heard Yang Tiandu call himself a good subject, he instantly had the urge to vomit, but he managed to hold it in. Otherwise, if he splashed Yang Tiandu's face, even if he was the captain of the Imperial Guards, it would be hard to explain. Ha ha ha, sect leader Yang's patience is really admirable, making me think of creatures like tortoises. Guang Yuan laughed loudly. If sect leader Yang returns home one day and sees a pervert about to do that to a beautiful concubine, will Master Yang also abide by the law and report to the Imperial Guards? That's for sure. Some other lone cultivators laughed. But is it really good to be cuckolded like this? Perhaps Master Yang has been infertile for many years, and that's why he'll endure the cuckolding and be a father. Ha 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 ha. The lone cultivators did not have any reverence in the first place, and all laughed loudly. Yang Tiandu instantly trembled in anger, but he pretended not to hear, and said, Captain Zhua, please uphold justice. Okay. Captain Zhua agreed. This was his duty. Where's that madman? Over there. Yang Tiandu pointed at a place where smoke and dust were drifting. Obviously, Ling Han was wreaking havoc there. Captain Zhou waved his hand and walked over with his men. In a short while, he arrived at Ling Han and Hun Yo, who were playing happily. Instantly, his heart trembled. He had seen Ling Han's portrait before. This was a strict order given by his superiors. As long as Ling Han did not commit any evil acts such as killing people, then no matter what he did, he would have to turn a blind eye to it. In fact, he would even have to lend a helping hand when he encountered danger. Captain Zhua, please act quickly to avoid greater losses, Yang Tiandu said from the side, because Captain Zhua suddenly stopped moving. Captain Zhua sighed, shook his head, and said, I can't interfere in this matter. What? Yang Tiandu had an urge to go crazy. Even the Imperial Guards couldn't interfere, were you kidding me? Lord Yang, take care. Captain Zhua revealed a meaningful smile. Also, a word of advice to Lord Yang, you must not hurt this person, or I'm afraid I'll have to take Lord Yang down. What the? Yang Tiandu felt extremely depressed. He invited the Imperial Guards over to help, but now they were helping instead. How could he endure this? Captain Zhua did not speak anymore, and with a wave of his hand, dozens of people stood to one side, as if monitoring Yang Tiandu. For a moment, everyone in the Earth and Water faction cursed 18 generations of Captain Zhua's ancestors in their hearts. How could he bully people like this? Peng, peng, peng. On the other side, Ling Han and Hun Yo were still wreaking havoc, looking as if they would not stop until the Earth and Water faction was demolished. Yang Tiandu sighed, closed his eyes, and clenched his fists. Because he used too much strength, his hands trembled slightly. After a while, he opened his eyes, and said, Young Master Han, let's talk about compensation. He admitted his cowardice. It couldn't be helped, it was a competition of strength. Behind Ling Han stood 7 spiritual ocean tier elites and 100 gushing spring tier elites, enough to crush the Earth and Water faction. If he took the official route, they were even more awesome. The Imperial Guards not only did not care, but also protected him. How could he compete? Ha 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 ha. The people of Guangyuan faction all laughed loudly. Lord Yang's divine art of the tortoise faction has really been cultivated to the point of perfection, expanding and contracting at will. Admirable. I definitely can't cultivate it. Chapter 199. Ling Han clasped his hands in obeisance, and said, This junior pays his respects to the Rain Emperor. He addressed himself as a junior, so what he did was naturally the etiquette of a cultivator, and there was no need for him to kneel. And if he paid his respects as a subject, then he would have to kneel. These were 2 completely different standpoints. The Rain Emperor did not blame him. Instead, he revealed a sliver of a smile, and said, Young man, you are very arrogant. At his feet, Su Ku Xian was startled awake. She opened her eyes and looked towards Ling Han, a hint of surprise involuntarily appearing on her pretty face. She had clearly seen this young man before. At that time, she had even thought of killing him, but she had not made a move. She had never thought that this person would actually be qualified to pay his respects to the Rain Emperor. This was very shocking. Your Imperial Majesty is the one who is awe-inspiring. With a single punch, you defeated that bullshit attendant of the Winter Moon sect, making this junior's blood boil. Ling Han flattered the Rain Emperor a little. Ha 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 ha. The Rain Emperor laughed loudly, shook his head, and said, Do you think that if you speak a little sweeter, I will be able to forget the trouble you have caused? Su Ku Xian could not help but be shocked. She had been by the Rain Emperor's side for a good few years, and she had practically never seen the Rain Emperor laugh like this before. He was even using a teasing tone to speak to a young man. She could not believe it. Ling Han said seriously, "Please forgive me, Your Imperial Majesty." The Rain Emperor humphed, and said, "No matter how angry I am, I would not dare to do anything to a black-grade high-level alchemist." Su Kuxian's beautiful eyes involuntarily widened. A black-grade high-level alchemist was right in front of her, and this young man, how could it be possible? But how could the Rain Emperor speak carelessly? Even if she did not want to believe it, she had no choice but to believe it. Ling Han snickered, and said, "I have not thanked Your Imperial Majesty for helping me out of my predicament just now. I will definitely repay you in the future." Since the Rain Emperor had pointed out his identity as a black-grade high-level alchemist, he would use his identity as an alchemist to speak to the Rain Emperor. In terms of status, he would only be slightly inferior. The Rain Emperor used his finger to lightly tap on the armrest, and said, "Eldest, third, and seventh, you have already met them. Which one do you think is more suitable to inherit the imperial throne?" Should he be the one asking this question? Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "Your Imperial Majesty should have already made a decision in your heart. I would not dare to speak carelessly. You are a black-grade high-level alchemist, and Fu Yuansheng and Wusong Lin are very obedient to you. If you disagree with me and encourage alchemists not to sell their medicine to the citizens of Rain Country in the future, wouldn't the country's history be destroyed in a day?" The Rain Emperor said calmly. Ling Han could not help but break out in a cold sweat. This was a bit too big of an accusation. The Son of Heaven was temperamental, and what if he thought that he was a calamity that could threaten the imperial power? Then no matter who he was, he would directly eliminate him. His spirit was highly focused. Once there was any strange movement, he would immediately enter into the Black Tower. At most, the Rain Emperor would discover that he had a secret technique that allowed him to teleport instantly, or that he could conceal himself or something like that. Even if he had to reveal a bit of his secret, it was still better than losing his life. Rest your little heart securely in your chest. If I wanted to kill you, you would not have been able to walk all the way here alive, the Rain Emperor said calmly. Ling Han laughed mischievously. On the surface, he breathed a sigh of relief, but in his heart, he did not relax at all. He would not easily trust another person. "Ling Han, how should I treat you?" the Rain Emperor asked. "An alchemist that can concoct foundation-building pills. Rain Country might even be thrown into chaos because of you." Pooh! Su Kuxian finally could not help but cough. The foundation-building pills that had caused such a commotion in the imperial city was actually concocted by Ling Han. Inconceivable, inconceivable. How old was he? How could he possibly concoct foundation-building pills? Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, "In future, if I concoct foundation-building pills again, I will prioritize giving half of them to the imperial family." "All right." The Rain Emperor finally smiled, and the tense atmosphere instantly dissipated. Indeed, being in the king's company was like being with a tiger. The king was temperamental and could kill at the slightest provocation. It was hard not to be nervous. Ling Han could not help but curse silently. If he still had the cultivation level of his last life, he would definitely give the Rain Emperor a good thrashing. He actually dared to scare him. But at this moment, he could only smile bitterly, and say, "I was almost scared to death by your Imperial Majesty." The Rain Emperor had laid the groundwork, and then said a threat. Actually, it was all for the sake of the foundation-building pills. "Ha, you will definitely become an Earth-grade alchemist in future. Even if I were to see you, I would have to welcome you with open arms. Now that your wings are not fully grown yet, I naturally have to beat you a little and bully you a little. There will not be another chance in future," the Rain Emperor said with a smile. Ling Han also smiled. Actually, the Rain Emperor was also a humorous person. It did not matter whether he was willing or not to make you feel amused. Eldest brother and third brother are still a little lacking in terms of temperament. They have ambition, but do not have the corresponding vigor. The Rain Emperor spoke up, giving his own sons his evaluation. Seventh brother is also a little too cautious and cautious. He is more than capable of defending his achievements, but is not aggressive enough. He paused for a moment, and then said, "You should be supporting seventh brother. With the help of a future Earth-grade alchemist, I can also retire with peace of mind. I have decided, after my 60th birthday, I will pass the throne to seventh brother, and from then on, I will focus on martial arts." Su Ku Xian was greatly shocked, and her beautiful face turned pale. She could not help but call out, "Your Imperial Majesty." The Rain Emperor stretched out a hand and pressed down, stopping her from speaking. He said, "You should also leave." Ling Han did not mind the two of them talking in riddles, and said, "Congratulations, Your Imperial Majesty." "Why are you congratulating me?" the Rain Emperor asked, all smiles. "Put down the affairs of the nation, and Your Imperial Majesty will be able to focus all your efforts on breaking through to the flower blossom tier, and henceforth transcend mortality and enter sainthood." Ling Han said, smiling. The Rain Emperor's eyes involuntarily lit up, and instantly, his aura surged like the waves of the sea, and he said, "You are actually able to guess my cultivation level?" Ling Han smiled, and said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing, "I am an alchemist, so my divine sense is much stronger than that of an ordinary person." The Rain Emperor nodded. This young man was indeed unique. Otherwise, he would not have been able to concoct alchemical pills that were close to earth grade when he was only in the element gathering tier. He then stretched out a finger to tap on the armrest and said, "Half a month later, I will hold a birthday banquet, and at the same time, there will be a martial arts battle to celebrate my birthday." Ling Han did not know what these words meant, so he only nodded, and did not reply. "The prize for the person who wins first place in the martial arts battle is a treasure from the inner treasury," the Rain Emperor said slowly. Ling Han's mind was instantly shaken. The Eye of Truth. The Rain Emperor was already half a step into the flower blossom tier, and added with the help of the power of the nation, he was like a god in Rain Country. His sight and hearing were practically omnipresent. Presumably, the few deals that he had made with the eldest and third imperial princes had not been hidden from this Rain Emperor. Ling Han's heart tightened. Then what about the matter of the Lu sisters? Strictly speaking, he was shielding the murderer who had attempted to assassinate the imperial consort, and this was no different from rebelling. And he should not know. The Rain Emperor was only human, after all. Even if he had broken through to the flower blossom tier, he would only have transcended beyond mortals, and was still far from becoming a god. He could only focus his limited attention on a few important figures. For example, he had 3 sons who were qualified to compete for the imperial throne. Every move they made definitely could not be hidden from him, and he was secretly comparing which one was more suitable to inherit the imperial throne. Thus, the matter of Ling Han discussing with the eldest and third imperial princes how to steal the Eye of Truth naturally could not be hidden from this Rain Emperor. Now that the Rain Emperor had taken out the Eye of Truth as a reward, the unspoken meaning was, "I am very clear about your little tricks, and as long as you are willing to listen to me, there will naturally be benefits for you." As expected of the ruler of a nation, he was so adept at manipulating power.